Hello, everyone. Welcome to Paranormal Round Table. That's PRT for short. My name is Josh Turner. I'm also known as Wolf, and I'm your host. Joining me tonight is
Tony.
You're going to call yourself Tony now?
I mean, I like the way you introduce yourself. So I am Tony, also known as
No,
Mushu.
you shouldn't. Yeah, I was going to say you should call yourself Mushu because you're Tony and I'm Anthony, but people still think we're the same person. So
I still think I'm the same person. Oh, I didn't even know.
My God.
My bad. I thought I was doing
you don't
that.
think at all. Let's not even pretend.
All right. You got
And we
me.
also have Ryan Tremblay in the house. Ryan, you want to say hello?
Hello.
Well, now
How's
it just-
everybody doing tonight?
It doesn't seem fair. Ryan doesn't have a nickname.
He's Rhino.
Oh, God.
Rhino. Okay. I thought.
Well,
Hey, there you go.
well, his last name is cool enough to be a nickname in and of
Tremblay.
itself. Yeah,
Yeah. Ryan
Tremblay.
Trembles.
That's why he has that outrageous French accent.
he makes the ladies tremble.
Hey, I like that. Let's stick with that.
So here's what we got going on, folks. Let me go ahead and give you the email address. It's Josh Turner at prtpodcast.com, Josh Turner at prtpodcast.com. We also have a website, prtpodcast.com. Go and check it out. We got merchandise. We got all kinds of stuff there. We got all of our back episodes. We're on several different platforms, but we ask that you go to YouTube to like and subscribe because it helps us out. And Tony has a group.
Paranormal Encounters. It's popping in there.
I don't know about that, but it's there.
It's definitely there.
And Nellie, who couldn't be with us tonight, pray for her. She's been in some back pain. She's having lots of problems with her back, and so she couldn't make it. She tried. She was in studio and she couldn't make it. So we're gonna have Anthony, Tony, and Ryan with us, and so we got a round table tonight. And it's important because it's 100th episode. Now, Nellie's group is Paranormal Lounge, and mine is Paranormal Round Table. All of our group together is pretty much Paranormal Round Table. And, of course, Nellie and Tony have their own groups. And, Ryan, you want to talk about your group?
A Whisper to a Scream Cryptid Podcast. Come join me over there.
On Facebook, folks.
We're okay over there. We're a pretty nice bunch of people.
So far, you just hit 500 today.
We did. Thanks
Yeah.
to you.
Well, you guys are rolling. I'm trying to help you get it rolling, keep it rolling. Folks, go and join our Facebook groups. There's going to be a giveaway for this show. It's the 100th episode, so there's going to be a backpack and a book. So you're going to get your autographed book from one of your favorite authors inside of a backpack. Going to be 2 of those.
Wait
So
a minute. We're getting a backpack and a book?
we're giving away
Nice.
Can I
backpacks.
enter into this?
PRT backpacks.
I don't even have a PRT backpack yet.
Because you don't deserve one. So
I'm just gonna snatch one. That is what I'm gonna snatch it from this giveaway. So don't listen to that. I'm gonna say thank you for providing me with a backpack. We're gonna send you a book. That I feel like that's a wonderful idea.
Well, I'm going to let Ryan and you pick the winners this
Okay.
week. Each one of y'all will get to pick. Ryan and Tony, you'll each get to pick a winner out of the comments. So we're going to post the show. What we're going to do is we're going to post a show on the Paranormal Roundtable group, on the group page, and you guys will go to that group and you will pick the winner. You guys, Tony and Ryan. So you guys will post a comment or whatever on that link.
Anything you're looking for when you pick for a comment, Ryan? Anything you want to tell them to put in there?
Yeah, maybe somebody that has a really good, provocative question, too. I'll
Okay.
just pick Tony.
I would like a funny comment, just
Yeah.
something funny, and I'll pick it off of that because I'm the
Make it
humor
a
of the
really
show.
good question.
Oh yes, he's the humor.
I'm the humor.
the
Ryan is going
face.
to be the inquisitive part, and you'll do the stories. I guess
You should
or
leave a
whatever.
comment making fun of Tony, and then he'll pick from the comments that mock him.
Yeah,
Which
I'll
one is-
choose the one that makes me cry the most in the shower. Yeah, that'll make me feel better.
He'll be in the the crying game.
Exactly.
Yep, over bad Tony comments. So what we have tonight, folks, we have our 100th episode, like I said. So we've been holding this one back. We could have dropped it a month or 2 ago, and we were like, you know what? We got closer to 100. We're like, let's just save it for the 100th episode because then we couldn't figure out what we were going to do for the 100th episode.
Well, I mean, everyone asked for this, especially. I mean, we've just every time we mention it, it just goes crazy. So finally, we're actually going to get to it.
Yeah, because it was so encompassing.
Mhm.
There was so much to talk about. There were so many witnesses involved in this, and this place was such a big place. And when we talk about the Hernandez Ranch, we're not talking about, because that's tonight's topic. We're not talking about one place. It's like a large ranch, thousands of acres, and but it's 3 or 4, 5, actually 5 different properties now, or 6 different properties. And so it was one time called the Hernandez Ranch. And these are aliases, but this is what we used when we talked about it on Dogman Encounters and Vic Cundiff show, episodes 116, 136, and 137. So if you're not caught up on those, I'll give you the rundown. What we're talking about is a place that exists in South Central Texas, and it is a very large area between two. It's like in a triangle, actually, between 3 different towns, and there is a river that runs through it, and there's a lot of creeks that kind of branch off into this property. And at one time, it belonged to the Hitchens, and they eventually sold some land to this guy whose name was Adam, and his name was Adam Hernandez. He worked for the family, and he ended up buying some of the land, and then he had a son named Adam, and then he had 4 other sons, Noah, Abel, and Andrew, and Jojo. And Joe, of course, was the youngest. And that's who we're going to focus on tonight, is that particular son, because he was actually, he's going to be the one that we're going to talk about, because he was actually instrumental in getting me back into the good graces with the family, because there was a little problem there, because when I did the shows on Vic Cundiff's, there was this lady who kept pressuring me to try and get Abel, who was my contact when I did the Dogman Stripe story, trying to get me to have him come on the show and talk, which he was not interested in doing, and I did it anyway. It was a big mistake, and it didn't work out, and I kind of lost his trust. And then I just kind of backed off, and so I didn't talk to the family for a little while, and we weren't working with them anymore at that time. We were working with them at one time for a very large construction company that's based around here, and they have several construction accounts at any given time, and we're doing 3 or 4 of them at any given time. And so we worked with this guy for about 2 years. His name was Jerry, and his dad was Andrew, and he was one of the sons of this guy, Adam, that was on this ranch. And so what ended up happening, I worked with him a couple times. Like he was coming in one of the houses where I was like posted up in front of. He was coming in and doing his job that he did. And he was one of the trades, and he owned a company that was one of the trades. And I started talking to him, like on a regular basis whenever I'd see him. And one day we sat there, and he was on his smoke break, whatever, and he was listening. I was playing Dogman Encounters radio, one of Vic's shows. And I don't listen to a lot of podcasts or whatever, but every once in a while I'll listen in, And I was listening to one of his shows, and he kind of sat there listening to it with me, and he was like, "This is interesting." He's like, "What are these things?" And when I started explaining to him what they were, he started telling me that he had these things on his property for a long time, and that they went back generations. And so in episode 116 of Dogman Encounters Radio, I actually talked about his encounters, this guy, Jerry Hernandez, and I talked about some of his brother's encounters, and his brother Joe, and his brother Robbie, and their encounters. And Joe, I'm sorry, is not his brother, it's his uncle. Joe was the youngest of those original brothers, the 5 brothers or whatever. He was born like 20 years after the youngest one, the second youngest one, which would have been Andrew, which was Jerry and them's dad. The reason that I'm telling all these names so you remember, because we're going to get into different people's encounters. And so later on, so you'll have to kind of follow like who these people are, I guess, a little bit. Not trying to just sound like I'm rambling, but so anyways, Jerry's dad, Andrew, would have been Joe's older brother. And like I said, Joe's the guy we're going to talk about tonight. I had a friend that used to do research, Bigfoot research. He works for a very prestigious large computer company. He's kind of a high up. I've known him for years, and we'll call him Brad. And Brad used to go out into this area and look for Sasquatch. And one day he had a Dogman encounter. Nothing real spectacular, but it did come out of some brush, and this was back in the 90s, late 90s, and he saw it. And so one day we talked about his so-called canine Sasquatch encounter, which he thought it was a canine looking Sasquatch. But he said it was a horrific looking creature. And he told me about it. It was kind of brief. And so it was him and his, at that time, girlfriend. And they saw it and it was just like, whoa. And then it was back into the brush and it was gone. But it was large and black. And he said it was pretty scary looking. So about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I was talking to him and he was interested in this story. So he got in touch with Joe and started talking to him. I guess this would have been 2 years ago, actually. And me and Joe started talking. He got me and Joe to talking, and because I had kind of like distanced myself. Me and the family hadn't talked because Abel had since passed away and he died. Me and him weren't talking anymore because of this particular woman that kind of pressed me to get him on the show at Vic's show, and he was kind of aggravated by that because he felt like I had gone and was trying to make money off of his story or whatever. And I told him, I'm not making any money off of it. And he's like, well, why would you go do a show? And I'm like, because it's interesting to me. It's something I want to do. I never got paid for these shows or anything. And so he was under the impression that I was trying to use him or something. And so
there was a misunderstanding.
It was a misunderstanding. And eventually me and Jerry talked too. And he was like, look, my uncle was getting really old. He was getting more paranoid, and Joe understood, his older brother was getting to where he was also starting to have some problems remembering like dementia or whatever. But he passed away, unfortunately, a couple years ago. And then Joe and me got in touch because of my friend Brad, who had developed a relationship with him about a year after I had done the story. And Brad gave me a lot of information from different people. So I went and I started doing my own investigating. And so me and Scorpion have talked to these people. My brother, Anthony, we all know these people. We worked with them for a long time. What's telling about this is that they each had a story. Like all the people that have lived in that area have all had an encounter. Multiple encounters, actually, most of them. And Jerry had told me his encounters, and on I put them on DER on episode 116, and then I did, like I said, I did Robbie's, and then I did Joe's. Now I wanted to focus on Joe tonight when we get started because he's the one that kind of got me back into where with the family to where we started talking again. It wasn't like we were mad at each other like me and Jared and the other guys. I just felt really bad about what happened with Abel, so I just kind of didn't really. I'd see him and just say, "Hey, what's up?" Whatever, But I didn't try talking to them anymore about this stuff because it just didn't feel comfortable to me. But my friend did bridge the gap for me, and so we all started kind of working together. And so here's what's going on. Just to bring you up to speed, those who are not that don't know what's going on. This story with Joe, what happened was there's all these encounters that took place on this ranch. And like I said, if you want to go and get real deep into the beginnings of it, you can go back to Dogman Encounters Radio, episodes 116, 136, and 137. But Joe's encounter was on 116, and we'll kind of rehash that. What happened was he was remodeling for a friend, the Lowrys, and they were friends of the family, so they were giving him a deal, and they were doing some work on the remodel. And he was at this house, and this was about 7-8 miles away from the ranch itself, where a lot of these encounters are taking place. And Joe was doing some work, and working late, and he saw something walk by a window, which he at first thought was a person wearing like a black cloak. And then he was like, "What was that?" Then he looked, and he thought he saw a dog standing in the window. When he registered that it was like, standing upright, it freaked him out, and then it moved away from the window, and he was like, whoa. And then this thing eventually made its way to the front of the house where he was already like freaked out and was scared stiff. And it started to bump against the house and make noise, and eventually it entered into the garage because the garage door was open. And that's when he realized, like, oh no, I'm in this thing is coming through the garage. Now, long story short, I'm not going to get into the whole dramatics of what happened because we talked about that in episode 116. But he ended up getting out the front door as this thing came into the house. And he did do something kind of intelligent. He pulled the garage door down.
There's a lock inside.
He kind of made it, so it beat its way out. because it didn't open the door with with its hands or whatever.
I remember when the people came in the morning and they were talking about how the house was just demolished and it seemed like a wild animal just went insane in there. And Joe, I'm pretty sure he was thinking like, yeah, it definitely was, definitely did.
and of course he's going to have to deal with it because they're like, what did you do? Did you get high on PCP? And
Well, I mean, it was obviously an animal, though. I mean, if I saw those scratches, I wouldn't think Joe's going crazy.
It's pretty nuts. I mean, and so what ended up happening was Joe got chased, or Joe got chased away. He got in his car and drove off. It didn't follow him or anything like that, but he got away. But after that incident, that wasn't the end. Like what ended up happening, and when we talked, this investigation went on and on. Like I talked to these people for months, starting like in the early summer all the way to the end of last year. I did a lot of intense investigating on this story. That's why this is going to be the opening salvo to a series of we're going to talk about these different people. But Joe's encounters, like what ended up happening was the second or third night that he was home after that, he didn't go back to work, obviously, for a while. He was kind of shaken up. He didn't even want to ride his bike. He didn't want to go out driving around at night because he was so freaked out. So he was sleeping during the day, and then he'd be wide awake at night because he was afraid. So his sleep schedule kind of got upturned or whatever. He developed insomnia eventually. And what happened was he was asleep in the den in his house one night, and he wakes up to hear like this scratching and growling noise, and he looks over and he sees that the window, there's like a window there, and he's like, "Man, I never even know." He was thinking to himself, "I didn't even know we had a window in the den," and he was like I guess he was just so shocked, like he was just he didn't even never notice that the window was there. And then the window was wide open, and there was these two red eyes. And he said out of the darkness just came this big mouth. And then he said that there was like two hands, and it was like almost orchestrated, like one hand and the other. And he said it looked like almost like two big tarantulas coming out of the window. That's how long and nasty the fingers were. And they were black nails, and they just kind of wrapped like one after the other, And he said he was just looking, and he saw this thing, just this red eyes staring right at him, and it began to crawl into the window. It kind of, put its paw-like hands down with its long fingers and began to kind of crawl toward him. And then he jumped up, and he said he was in pitch darkness. He jumped up, and then he realized that he had just woke up, and he stumbled forward. So that was his dream. And he was like, he looked over, and he was like, there was no window there. Didn't even exist. And he was just like, oh, thank goodness. And that was one of his most intense dreams that he had. He had another one where he kicked the sheets up off of himself, and he saw, as the sheet was coming down, he saw this Dogman looking creature standing at the foot of his bed. And as the sheet descended, then it was gone, and you could still see the legs, and then it was gone. And it was so weird. He told me that was like when he was kind of like that half awake, half asleep state, And so he knew that something was going on, and it was more than he, like he initially thought, like, oh, there's just some like giant wolf-like creature that's a rabid animal type thing. He started realizing that there was some sinister quality to this thing, and it wasn't like what he thought it was. And he kept telling me that, when we were doing this investigation, he was like, Wolf, you're not gonna believe me. It's not like the way you think it is. He's like, what everybody seems to think that these things are, he goes, that's not it, And so he kept making sure that I understood that, and I was like, okay. And I told him that I have dealt with a lot of different cases with these things. I've talked to lots of different people. And, it was just one of those things where I think that he had to get me to like fully understand where he was coming from, because he didn't think I did. And I don't think he thought anybody did. Because a lot of people, they had these different reactions, like Abel, he had this sort of affinity toward that one that he called Stripes. And so that kind of tempered his beliefs and feelings about it. Noah's were negative, very negative. Jerry's were kind of benign. And JoJo's were pretty, they were pretty intense and very negative, very, very negative. And so, his encounters, what ended up happening with this guy, it got worse. I mean, like the insomnia got worse, and eventually he started having waking like hallucinations. He would see what he thought were hallucinations. he would see this thing standing in the stairwell, or
Like the corner of his eye, or
the corner of his eye, and then
Okay.
but sometimes he'd stare at it. It'd be there for a minute, and it'd blink away. So he began to feel like he was being stalked. And then he thought that it was like maybe him just hallucinating. But then his wife began to have these. She saw weird things, and she knew how bad what he was going through. So for a while, she wasn't telling him what she was going through. One of the more intense things that she said that shit happened to her, and I talked to her once, just one time, and she told me her stories. She was getting in the car to back out, and as she was pulling out, she looks up and she sees, and they live out in the country, and they don't live near the ranch. They lived outside of Kyle, which was a pretty good ways away from it. And so she saw this thing like standing in the driveway, like behind her car, and she's like, "Oh crap, what is that?" And she thought it was like a big dog that kind of popped up, but she knew all about what Joe was going through, and so she was like, "Oh no, it's one of those things." And she realized, like, well, real quick, like she switched gears and was like, "No, it's one of those things, and it's behind my car." And so she slammed on the brakes, and she was just like, "This is crazy," So she was scared to get out of the vehicle. So she began honking the horn until her oldest son came out, and he came out and was like sitting there playing video games or whatever. And she said he came out with like his headset on. And she was like yelling at him, "Take the headset off, pendejo," like, and she kind of cracked the window down a little bit, and she's like, look, and she's like, "Go get your dad, go inside." And so she didn't want to drive because she thought the thing was below the car, like under the car or whatever. So he comes outside with his pistol, Joe, and starts to look, and she's pointing under the car, and there's nothing there. And he goes around and around, he's scared, and she's scared. And so she described this thing kind of how Joe saw it in his dreams. And so we eventually, what I was able to figure out was that there was something there that was very much flesh and blood, but it was also manifesting itself in some sort of like it was messing with their heads for sure. It was also very like a spiritual nature to it too. And that's one of the reasons why in the last couple of years I've been like vehemently trying to tell people, look, Linda Godfrey made a good point. She said that she thinks that these things are interdimensional. And I have a buddy that tells me all the time that he thinks that not only interdimensional, but they're flesh and blood when they come out of these portals. And then when they go further away from the portal, they become more flesh and blood. You know what I mean? They're like ethereal, and then they just become more flesh and blood the longer they stay on our plane of existence, and the more so they really are flesh and blood. They really are, but they're also ethereal, and when they come out of these portals. And Linda Godfrey said the same thing. She thinks that when they're on our plane of existence, they have to eat and drink and do whatever we do in a physical sense the longer they stay. So that's what I was kind of trying to convey to people. I've been trying to say that because I've got a lot of witnesses that have talked about this being the case. And that's why we're having such a hard time finding all this evidence, because these things are not normal flesh and blood creatures. Yeah, they'll eat things and they'll appear to be flesh, but they're not from here. They're moving in and out, And another theory too is that certain people can see them while others can't. There's a guy who was talking to us. We ate dinner with him, Anthony, and he's a witness we just ate dinner with. We're going to talk about his encounters someday soon. And he was talking about, he had hyena type encounters like you, Brian.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah. And so what ended up happening was this guy said that he has a certain blood type. Now he believes that it's very possible that's why these things are attracted to certain blood types. And I'm not going to get into all that right now, but I told him that it's very possible that certain people can see them while others can't. Like they manifest themselves and those other people are with them would normally not see them, but they're with that particular person that's the experiencer. So then they're able to see it. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, people's eyes perceive things differently, right down to colors. I mean, if you remember that picture of that dress that was going around, is it white and gold or black and blue or whatever it was? It caused a bunch of controversy, but it just kind of made people realize, like, hey, the way I perceive the world is not the way someone else perceives it. So, it's very possible that certain people can see these cryptids, entities, whatever they are, and others just they don't see anything at all.
Yeah, I also believe it's a certain level of belief too. Like sometimes, if you aren't looking to see anything and you just see something real quick, most people are very quick to just dismiss it. So I feel like there's a lot of stuff that we miss just naturally that we just don't really think about, and we probably just think of as like a normal minor thing that happens. Like who knows how many times a fairy flows by your head and you just think it's some annoying little fly.
Yeah. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, people perceive things a certain way, and that it's all about perception. But, there is something to this where certain people have these Dogman things happening and others don't. Other people seem to have chance encounters, but you might, if it was another person walking along, just like what you saw, Ryan, he might not even have perceived that creature. He might not have even seen it. It might have been invisible to them.
That's very true.
And
yeah, a lot of it is like, they say seeing is believing, but, some people just don't see these things at all.
Well,
It's a state of mind, I think.
Sometimes people don't believe to see. So, I mean, that's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. It's all state of mind, really.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and if you go back to Joe's encounter in episode 116 of Dogman Encounters, I talk about how he made fun of the other guys for a long time. He was making fun of Jerry. He was teasing everybody about what they were seeing. You're seeing all these werewolves and stuff. I don't believe in none of that until it happened to him, and then it became very real, and then it became too real. And Jerry told me he learned a valuable lesson about teasing people. I mean, when you talk to him, he's a very down to earth, honest guy. I mean, he did some time and in a very bad unit, but he made some mistakes, and he paid for it, and he's I think
on with his life. So,
I think he's a pretty good guy and very trustworthy. Actually, he's a hard worker. And, one of the things I was going to say too, like sometimes when people, like, not only do they not see, they don't hear. Like you may hear something and see something and three other people hear it and see it and they don't, and that was what I was going to talk about with one of Joe's encounters. They went to the river and they went tubing. And so they were all tubing down the river and, they went to the Frio, which is a river that I didn't even know existed until a couple years ago. Found out through Chief and Squid and my old co-host had all kind of schooled me on that. I can't even believe I did not know it because I'd never been. I realized later that I had been there and didn't know what it was. Didn't know that that's where I was at. And I thought, man, this must be a Mandela effect because I don't remember this place. But they were on the Frio and they were tubing, and he said the water wasn't real good though, because it was like they had to stop and get out and at certain spots and walk. It was terrible.
It's like the worst part of it.
Yeah, it was terrible. And so the water wasn't high enough, So and then eventually they just kind of gave up and went back to their campsite. But while they were all there at the campsite, there was this loud howling that was going on right around dusk. And then as the sun went down at night, JoJo claims that he and his oldest son and his youngest daughter and their friend, and then Robbie, his nephew, which was Jerry's brother, they all witnessed these two Dogmen just like clear as day, like just walk right, like about 50 yards from the camp. And the other people that were with them, this is so weird. Like they were sitting there and they were like, "Don't you see that? You don't see those?" And like literally, they were the only ones that saw it. But the family they were with didn't see anything. And like Joe was like, and I talked to Robbie too, and he said the same thing. He's like, we all witnessed it, like clear as day. Robbie's girlfriend couldn't perceive it. Like they couldn't see what they were. They couldn't see them. And he's like, you don't see it. There's two of them right there. They were up on a ridge. And he said it wasn't like it was hard. The sun was kind of behind them, so you had to shield, but you could make out what they were. And they were just like, I don't see it, And so this whole other family that they were with, and then Robbie's girlfriend, they didn't see it at all. So I started talking to a Joe, and I was thinking, what is this? Some sort of familial thing or something that your family and Craig's family, Shane's family sees it, and you don't? I don't understand. That's weird. I couldn't understand like why the people from that region could see it. So I knew it wasn't just their family because you have Shane and his brother Cody, and they could see these things and just had all kinds of stuff going on with them. Their wives had problems with them, their children, and so
It's got to be something spiritual.
It has to be, but then it manifests itself as physical.
Yeah.
But what ended up happening with Joe was that this thing, it got more and more nasty, just real bad. Like his daughter was playing in their garage, and they were playing with that chalk, that chalk you can erase from cement or whatever. I'm sure because Tony, your little sister, used to play with
Yeah, we
that
played
stuff.
hopscotch and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
You'd wash
And
away in
Tony
the
used
rain.
to eat it.
Tony, yeah, I was gonna say your little sister played with it, but apparently you did too. So, okay.
No, did she play with it? I played with it. I don't know what she did.
I know
She
you
was
were
probably
about,
doing something like playing football or something boring. I was
you were like-
dressing up in princess.
Yeah.
I was playing football too.
He was like 15 playing with the chalk outside.
And he was chewing on it.
Are you chewing?
I like to pretend there were cigars while I was making myself a little cowboy saloon.
And we wonder why my friend, your stepdad, had a hard time with you. You come out, you that me? Am I bad, Dad?
He'd boil it up with some salt and pepper, put some garlic on it.
You seem to be an expert on chalk eating there, mister. I feel like I'm not the only one. So
Well,
you're over here talking a lot of smack for...
I learned from the best.
So anyways, this is what happened. She was playing out there and she was messing with drawing chalk on the ground, whatever. And she heard like a whistle, like a high-pitched whistle. And she said it almost sounded like the wind blowing. And this is his youngest daughter. And she turns and she sees this, what she thought was a big dog coming down their driveway. And they have a long driveway at that time where they were living there. And she saw this black dog just walking down the driveway. And then halfway down the driveway, he stood up and began to walk on two legs. But she said he was walking with his arms out forward and his back bent backwards. The way she described it was like a cartoon. Like he was appearing to her almost cartoonish like, and was like kind of with a big smile on his face. And she told her dad that he looked like he was smiling. And he was like, what? And when she tried to describe it to him, it was like the same creature that he had seen, the one that had attacked him or tried to attack him,
When you mean cartoon, do you mean like kind of like the animator, or do you mean like his features were just
like
a bit out of
the way
proportion?
the way that he was walking. She said he had like big goofy feet and he had a big smile on his face and a big red tongue. Like he was just like his tongue was hanging out and he was like kind of smiling
He's
and
trying to
laughing.
act kind of
Like he's all cool, like everything's cool. She said he had yellow eyes. They weren't red, like the way Joe and his wife were seeing him. And he's like, oh, he just big red nose. He had like his nose was red, like a reddish
It's
nose.
like a cryptid group movie kind of.
Yeah, well, you think about a red nose, you're thinking clown or like something, that like the child would,
Rudolph.
yeah, like shoot, like yeah. And actually, that's what she said. She said it was like a Rudolph nose, but then you could tell it was like a dog nose. And as it got closer, and she said she closed her eyes and opened them again. And she said when she closed her eyes, she saw this the way it looked like she thought it was for real, which was a completely demonic looking creature that was just ugly and hideous. And she opened her eyes and it was still there. And she was like, and then it was like, hey, can I talk to you? You want to be friends? Like it started to communicate with her, not through words, but she said it was in her head. So obviously this thing was talking to her. And she said that while this was going on the road, she could see cars and stuff driving by. And it wasn't like anybody was seeing this 8-foot tall creature. It was just her. And so she said that, this happened to her, and she was probably, I think she was about 7 years old at that time. And so she said that this thing was like what she told Joe and her mommy, that this thing was like telling, are your mom and dad home? And she was like, yeah, they're inside. And he's like, your dad's been very bad. And she was like, what? And he was like, your dad's been a very bad man. So I'm going to have to take care of that. And she's like, what do you mean? It was almost like a threat, like he's threatening her, telling her, I'm going to do something to your dad. Well, to me, what I gathered from that was like, it was a threat that she ran back and told Joe, which added more to his cracking frame of mind, And so this was going on. And then the other daughter came out. She went inside because she got scared, told the older daughter, and then they both went outside and they both saw it. Except when the one girl saw it, she said it just kind of looked like blurry, like when something's hot from a distance and it just kind of blurs away and it goes away. That's what she saw. So then she said that this thing, like it just kind of vanished before their eyes and just kind of turned blurry, whatever, and it went away. And then they went inside. They told their mom. The mom's, and of course later she told Joe, whatever. And Joe took it in stride over and over again, just kind of going like, nothing I can do about it. I'm just gonna have to let it go. But he couldn't sleep. He just kept. He said if it wasn't for the insomnia from the dreams or whatever, he would probably have been able to cope. He said, because it wasn't really doing anything physical at that point.
Which actually is more frightening to me because I feel like, any simple creature or animal can do things physical to you. It's when you mess with the person's peace of mind that I know that there's something demonic or there's something sinister truly to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that when I hear that, that's what really freaks me out, is that it wouldn't mess with him physically because it doesn't care about that.
Well, and also the whole physical thing about it was, I think that this thing had an ability, even if it is a flesh and blood creature, because obviously it is to some degree, to be able to interact with the garage and the way it did and all that. What I think is a physical creature that's able to manifest itself spiritually. Like it can, like if you were like me, okay, and I was able to just come out of my body and walk through walls and go and harass someone. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like this thing was able to project itself spiritually. So it's like, what is it? A spiritual being having a physical experience, which is what I think we are, or is it a physical being having a spiritual experience? Like it's one or the other. But this thing was doing things that were very of a sadistically spiritual nature. And I'm telling you, like some of the things were ridiculously evil, like obnoxiously evil. Like scaring one of the little kids and of the friend of the family that came over for a sleepover, and they're brushing their teeth, and the lights went out, and they saw this wolf-like thing just come lunging out head first out of the mirror, and then they closed their eyes screaming, and they opened their eyes and it was gone. So you're terrorizing little kids, and it was definitely a werewolf-like entity. Then there was this other incident where Joe was outside and he was gearing up to go on a ride on his motorcycle, and he forgot something, and so he goes back into the house or whatever to find what the thing was, whatever that he had left. And so he went back inside the house and he hears something go into the garage, and then he turns and he's literally reliving that same experience that happened before. He heard this thing in the garage, then he hears the pounding on the door, and he's like, oh my gosh. And for whatever reason, he just decided right then and there he was going to go open the door and confront this thing, and if it's there, it's there. So he goes to the door, he opens the door and confronts it with his pistol, and there's nothing there. It was nothing. There was nothing. There was no damage. There wasn't anything. And then he just said at that point he broke down and was just like, crying to himself, like, what am I doing? This thing's messing with my mind. So he canceled his trip, Then he ended up rescheduling, and when they did go on the bike ride, there was this incident that took place. It was a pretty horrific incident that actually mirrored kind of what happened to his son, his oldest son. And I'll tell you what happened to him in a minute. But what happened was on Joe's bike ride, they were getting near to a town. They were getting near to a rest stop because they were long ways in between towns. And as they were starting to pull in, these two, what he said looked like almost like bears when they first came running out into the road. They were that big, And he said that they were completely different animals, like from what he was being terrorized by. But they looked like, because they looked very much flesh and blood, but they were not the same creature. They were of the same species, I should say, whatever it is, this Dogman thing. He said they were both blackish gray, timber wolfish like, but with fluffy hair. Now he said they were very like their hair was like if you blow dried them and they kind of puffed out. Yeah. And so he said that these two creatures came scrambling out from underneath these picnic tables, and he said they were fast, but they were hauling, and so they just gunned it, him and his two friends, and just kept going on their bikes. And these things scrambled out onto the road, and they could see them in their mirrors, and they just pursued them. I mean, and stayed at a steady clip. They had a good lead on them, and they didn't really gain any ground, but they were also moving like 70, 80 miles an hour. So those two things, to be able to stay at a steady clip and not fall behind until, he said it was a good, 10 minutes before they tired off, I guess, and just decided to give up. They weren't gaining any ground. So he estimated, that they stayed with him for, and his friends, they all pulled off onto the road, in the next town over. It was like a truck stop. And they were like, did you see that? And they were like, what was that? And of course, Joe had not told them, I'm being plagued by werewolves. But these two guys that were on the bikes with them, they were just like, they're like, did you see that? You know? And they just kept saying that. They didn't know what else to say. They were just like, they were huge. They were just like wolves. And he was like, yeah. And he didn't know what to tell them. He felt like confessing at that point and telling them, look, they were probably after me, but he was too afraid. And now this was like a good 180 miles away from where he lived. This was not close by. This was way out in West Texas. And he said that it was like these things were stalking him. And to appear at that rest stop in kind of an ambush position, you're thinking, how would they know to get there or go there? I mean, this has to be some sort of supernatural thing that they're doing, or they're utilizing some sort of portal or something, you know? And so that was his incident. Then now his son had an incident where, you guys know where the Salt Lick is, the restaurant. Yeah. So right out there near Driftwood, his son was coming back from his girlfriend's house, and he was riding his bike, his motorcycle, and the whole family likes to bike or whatever. And so he's riding his motorcycle, and this small, like he said, it looked like a skinny wolf, but it was like really, really like long, like it was tall and long. And he said this like skinny black wolf-like creature runs out in front of his bike. At that point, he had not had much experiences, like, you know, it's like his dad. He knew the stories and stuff, but his dad wasn't really telling him everything that was going on. And so this thing ran out in front of the road in front of him, and his instinct was to like swerve, and, you know, and he said that he started to swerve and try to miss it. And he said that something just told him, no, just keep going. He's like literally like a voice, like an inner monologue told him, hey, keep going, because if you don't, something's going to happen. So just keep going, keep your eyes on the road. And it was like talking to him. And it said, now speed up. And he said it was like a voice. It literally told him that. And it wasn't his voice. He said it was almost like an older man's voice or whatever. And so I kind of thought maybe it might have been Abel, like literally telling him that, because he said it sounded kind of like one of his uncles. And I said, which one? He said Abel. And I said, wow. Because, you know, Adam and Abel were the ones that were deceased. They were the deceased uncles. And so he was driving, and it was crazy because this thing ran across the road, and he almost swerved. And then a few yards past that, he was just getting his bearings, looking over to the left to see what that thing was. Then over to his right, he hears a crash and a crack even through the revving of his motorcycle. And he sees this creature with red eyes, and it's starting to like run up onto the road. And then it just goes right behind his bike. And he said that it reached out its paw, he had like a paw-like hand, as he described it. And it reached out, and he said it almost touched his back tire. And he said that when it did, it made a lunge, and then it kind of slowly came to a roll, like it kind of rolled itself up and then flipped. And he said that it kind of hopped up on two legs, almost like a weird-looking cartwheel, like an accidental cartwheel, and then just kept running on two legs, and then it got back down on all fours, and it kept running after him. But he said that gave him enough of a push to get ahead of it. And he said that he couldn't go like much more than 50, 60 miles an hour because of the curves on that road. And he said eventually this thing just kind of ran off back into the bush. And then one day, him and his dad were talking, and he heard his mom, he had heard his mom and his dad talking about what happened to Jojo when he was with his two friends. One of them's name was Carlos. I talked to that guy. I didn't talk to Rich, the other dude, but I talked to Carlos. And Carlos told me his story, you know, like same, it matched Joe's descriptions, everything. So if these guys were making it up, they were definitely coordinating it very well. And so I was just like blown away by that, you know. And then me and my friend Brad had both talked to them, you know. Like I said, Brad's a Bigfoot researcher, became a Dogman researcher because of his sighting. So what ended up happening was, Carlos said that he had nightmares for like two or 3 months after that. Like he just kept having these weird nightmares of this black, it was just like a black mass though, that would kind of take the form of like a wolf, but on two legs. And he said that but it actually kind of looked like a different individual than those ones he'd seen. He said that he could spot them other two in a lineup. He said he'll never forget it, dude. I mean, he thought it was like a cross between a bear, a wolf, and a gorilla. The way he described them, he said they were just like huge. And that they were just gigantic, you know, animals or whatever they were. And then, you know, Joe said that multiple times him and his wife were driving along, and they would look and see something on the side of the road, and it would be like something sticking out. You know, there's so much trees around here, so much woods, it's heavily wooded, you know. And they would just kind of duck back into the tree line. And then one day, the little girl, one of the little girls was like, "Look, mommy, look," and she's like, and they all three looked, and there was one of them just sitting there on all fours with its weird looking hands right there, and they had one of the aunts with them. It was Andrew's wife, and she was in the back seat, and she saw it too. So you had 4 people witnessing this thing, and then they said it just kind of started to jog alongside the car, not really like it wasn't interested in him. It was looking straight ahead. Then it kind of turned toward them and then cut back and ran into the woods. And they said that lasted about 3 or 4 minutes.
These things are gunning after them.
Yeah, and so it's obviously that these things have a vendetta or something's going on. One of the things that he did a little research because his wife wanted to get to the bottom of it, and she told me about this. One of the things that I talked to Andrew's wife, I actually got to talk to her too. I'd never talked to her before, and I got her stories too. Now I'm going to get into that one day because that's a whole nother ball of wax. But she was born like with the eye. She could see things. She could always see spirits and things like that. And so what happened was they went to her, and then there was a curandera that had actually taught Andrew's wife a bunch of stuff. So she took her to her down at Eagle Pass. And of course they did like the ceremony with they do the egg and all that, the cleaning, the cleanse. Kind of like what your mom used to do, Tony, the cleaning.
You mean with the egg?
With the egg, yeah.
Where like they would boil an egg and rub it on you, and if it like went black on the inside where the yolk was at, then they would put it under the bed for some reason. My mom would do it, but I would never understand why.
Well, yeah, because it's supposed to clean your aura, it cleans your body, whatever.
Really?
Rid you of
I've always saw it as like even if
energy.
Even if it didn't work, it always made me feel like it worked because you would see that yolk with like the black spots all around it, and you're like, I'm fixed, I'm healed now. Anything I had is gone.
You're good.
Got a clean slate for some more sinning.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, time to go to the gambling hall where the dancing girls and the whiskey. Oh wait, that's Gunsmoke. Never mind. So what happened was they did this cleanse, okay, and on her, and then they kind of regressed her, and so this was JoJo's wife, Linda, and so what Linda told me was that when they did this cleanse, she went home that night, and the curandera told her you're going to see your past, you're going to see what happened to you, and so what happened was she was sleeping over at a friend's house with her older sister, and it was actually the best friend of her older sister, and that family was real close to her family, and so her family had gone out of town to go Christmas shopping because they live way out in the country, and they're a small town, so they had gone to the next biggest town. Now that was that next biggest town where this took place was right outside of Amarillo. That's where she grew up, and so they had gone to Amarillo, and they lived like further away, and so they stayed the night at the friends or whatever, and they ended up having a UFO encounter. They were jumping on a trampoline in the backyard, and they see this like meteorite looking thing come flying in, like I guess into the atmosphere, and then it kind of stopped and it hovered, and then it got real close to them real fast, and they saw that it had like greenish blue lights going around it. And then it landed in like 2 or 3 lots over. And so they jumped off the trampoline and they went to look, through the fence, and they saw, and for whatever reason, they weren't afraid, and they just were attracted to it. So they just started walking towards it. And they said this was like 11, 12 at night, and the parents were asleep. And this was wintertime, and they had kind of snuck out and were just like, the parents were sound sleepers or whatever, either that or maybe they like to, imbibe. I don't know, but they were out. And so one of the daughters had actually gone inside. One of the kids had gone inside. I think it was the daughter's friend, to see if the parents were awake to show them, but she couldn't wake them up or something. So they were sound sleepers. They were out. So she's like, yeah, they're asleep, so let's go check it out. So they went and they checked it out. And when they got close to it, this creature steps out from behind like a little shed, and it was like 9 feet tall. And she said that it was canine looking, and it started to talk to them, and it said, "What do you want?" And they said, "We wanted to see your ship." And he's like, "Sure." And then she's like, "Where are you from?" And he points up, and he says, "Up there." And then they all kind of focused on this star, and he said, "That's where I'm from." And then they saw like the shadow of something moving around inside the ship, but they didn't on this little this spacecraft. was like a just a stereotypical UFO like shape, like a disc. And she said that there was something moving around inside of it, and it kind of spooked them because they heard it growling. And then this large creature got their attention by kind of making a pop, like a noise, like a pop, like it moved its hips or something. And she said that they both, or all three of them, focused on this creature, and it said, "Any more questions?" And it says, "What are you doing here?" And he says, "I'm here to feed." And when it said that, it frightened them, and they all began to run back to the house. And of course, they went back into the house, and they started trying to wake up the parents, and the parents were just like out. And she said that at that point, they all went to the living room, and then she looked over. She was messing with an Etch-a-Sketch. And she said she looked over. Next thing you know, her older sister and her friend were both asleep on the couch. They were just out. And they were 14-year-olds, and she was like 11. So and so that was all she remembers. And then she said that next thing you know, she got real drowsy and she went to sleep. And then she remembers waking up and she was on the floor. They were all on the floor of their sister's friend's house. They're in her house, in her bedroom. I'm sorry, on the floor of the bedroom in their house. And so that was a very weird incident. And she said that was the only thing that she can, that she recalled having anything to do with these creatures until she went, she met JoJo. And then, of course, like Joe, she'd heard the stories from his brothers and his uncles and all the weird stuff that they talked about and how there were these creatures and all that. And she said the same thing. She never bought into it, didn't really believe it. She was like, and didn't even know that incident, didn't even remember that incident happening. Well, she phoned her sister and she asked her, she's like, "Do you remember this incident?" And the sister said, "Yeah." And she's like, "Well, why haven't we ever talked about it?" And she's like, "We've talked about it several times." And she's like, "You always just kind of get a blank stare on your face and you don't say anything."
Well, it just checks out.
Yeah, she checked out. Yeah, and she's like, and they're still friends to this day, and actually neighbors. Her sister is still friends and neighbors. They live in that same town, in that rural town, and they are still friends with that same girl. And she said, we've talked about it, and you just kind of, you space out and you don't say anything. You just sit there. And she said one time your head started kind of bobbing back and forth, and we thought you were having a seizure. So we just, I just never brought it up again. But she's like, it came up several times.
I mean, that seems weird to like see something like that and then just never bring it up again and be like, "Oh, well, we've been traumatized for life. I guess that's it."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what are your thoughts on that though?
Did they see anything when they were running away? Like, was that big creature, like, did they see anything? I know you said they saw like something like moving around, but they never got a better.
Yeah, there was a second. You're talking about there was a second entity.
So there was another one that
there
they
was another
actually
one
saw,
that came out, but it was a lot smaller. And for some reason, they said that it looked like it was subservient to the bigger one. That's the impression
you think like
that
an
she
parent-child situation, or more like a subordinate?
No, like a subordinate. Okay. And they said that this one though, the second one was wearing like a type of tunic or something. The way she described it, not her words, but the way she described it was like it was a tunic. Very weird. It was blue. She said she remembered that.
What did they describe the ship at all? Or?
Yeah, it was like just like I said, like a UFO, what you would like the disc, but it had like the windows all the way around it, little weird looking windows. They were kind of mirrored, but they were like a bluish green light coming out of them. One
thing I don't understand, or one thing that I find very creepy or disturbing is that, okay, this entity pointed to a star and said, "I'm from there," right? So the nearest star is light years away, and it said that it's here on Earth to feed.
Mm-hmm.
So you mean to tell me that between a star light years away and this planet, there's no prey?
It might mean something else.
There's no prey animals, or maybe we're just like a special delicacy. Maybe humans just taste really, really good to whatever these things are.
You're thinking in like the food sense,
yeah.
But we don't even know when we're talking about these creatures. I think these are like an intelligent level that like even different from just these primal ones that we sometimes find. So we don't even know what these are searching for when they say feed.
And they probably come through some sort of Stargate. I mean, I would assume you'd have to.
I mean, I understand maybe like, you want like a good burger, so you might go a little farther for like a Dairy Queen or a P. Terry's. But I mean, that's in Texas. I don't know where people have their burgers, but I'm not going to travel like light years away and be like, oh, I want to try some humans.
Yeah.
I think like there's a specific something that they mean by feed, and it might not just even be them themselves, but it might be like an energy source or something that those are looking for. Who knows? But like these dimensional ones, that I think they might be a different type. Who knows?
Well, I know this, and I feel that I'm going to be doing a show on mantis alien abductions because I got some material from some people that were abducted by these mantis creatures. And one of the encounters was there were these Dogman-like creatures that were with this mantis, and they were actually holding this woman down as this mantis creature like observed her with its weird-looking eyes. And she said she looked up, and in either side of her were these two wolf-headed looking, just monstrous creatures. And so when she said that, I was like, she's like, yeah, I never really believed in the Dogman phenomenon, but one time during one of my abductions, she's like, I saw these things, and they were with these mantis type creatures, and they didn't speak. They just kind of were doing what they were told, or helping out, I guess I should say. But I've heard of that recently, not too many times. Like since that Celestial Sasquatch episode we did, we had people reaching out talking about Dogman and Sasquatch being extraterrestrial or ultra-terrestrial or interdimensional. I don't know. I'm not saying that this is all what this is, but whatever this thing was that was messing with Joe, it could manipulate. And what they found out too, Andrew's, which is Joe's brother, one of his older brothers, Andrew's wife, found out through some of her friend is into transcendental meditation, does all this different stuff. I can't tell you a whole lot about because I've never done that, but she did this sort of a remote view thing, and she found out that these things that were what she claims that were on this property and they did come from another place. They do live in another realm, but they're able to travel back and forth, according to her. And what they did was they stayed here, okay, and they interbred with humans. And then these humans, were basically, they had children, and their children could be like human or they could be like them. This is what this lady said, okay? She could be literally just talking through her rear end, for all I know. She could just be like taking the theory, but to me, this is what she claims she saw. Okay, but this could just be, it's just her theory on it. And she said, or her belief as she claims, but I take it with a grain of salt, could be a theory, but it sounded pretty cool. And they bred with humans, and the humans, they come out either looking like that or they come out human, and the human carries the gene, and then the creatures, when they look like that, they send them out into the world. And that's what Stripes was. Stripes was actually an outcast. And the mother was literally able to she was like an in-between. She could shift. And so the mother was killed for trying to keep it in the family or whatever. And so that's what Abel found. Now, there's another theory, though, that came up later on that these things they're not interdimensional or anything like that. They were just living on that property, and that they were human in nature, though. They were humans, and they were able to change. They were able to shift back and forth, but that somewhere down the line through this shape-shifting process, which was black magic, they were using, they were like bruja, could create a shapeshifter like a lechuza,
Mm-hmm.
And so they created the ability to shape. They created one of these things to the ability to shapeshift, and it was a bruja's child that they started with. And then it shapeshifted, and then it bred with a human, and then they were able to shift, and then they got stuck. Some of them got stuck like that, and sometimes they would get stuck in weird, different transformations. And that Stripes was unfortunately the child of two of these unholy unions, because they're not supposed to breed with one another, because then you end up with something, that's
Do you think that's why he was weaker and kind of mangy?
When he was young,
yeah.
They was left out in the elements.
Yeah.
I don't think he was left there to die. I think his mother had been killed, and I think he was left there to die. But
well, do you think maybe how sometimes the runt of the litter, they are very malnourished and they struggle a lot, but sometimes they grow up to be strong, very strong, because sometimes that sacrifice and that, are the struggles that you deal with make you a stronger person throughout overall. Do you think it's a similar thing to where like that those were just like his afflictions and everything, but because he got help from Abel, like he was able to actually survive them? Because do you think that maybe they left him because he was actually supposed to die?
Yeah,
like maybe like they saw those things and they were like, yeah, we don't want this spreading to the rest of us, so they just left him out like
because
that.
that thing would never be able to breed.
Yeah,
because according to them, because if it did, the human, they wouldn't be able to shift. It would be no point in having him. You couldn't hide your identity.
I agree with that, but I also don't feel like they would let him back in and be a pack leader and become the alpha.
No, because he's not. These were humans.
I'm talking about Stripes, though.
I know, but these were humans that according to another theory I heard, was and this woman that told this theory. Her name was Rosa, but she's one of the cousins of Jerry and Joe and them, and so her theory was that these things were humans, and not theory, that was her belief, like what she claimed that she saw in a vision, and that these things were like that's what Stripes was. He was the unholy union of these things that had shifted and stayed that way because they altered their DNA literally. And they're able to do this through a type of what we would consider black magic, but it's really just like what I would call black science. Yeah. In the way that they did this, and they were manipulative. They were gene manipulated, and so they were able to do it through.
It kind of reminds me of that pen and paper RPG, Werewolf Apocalypse. How you can be born. How you can be born as a metis, which are like the result of two shapeshifters breeding and the offspring is called a metis, and it's kind of like a deformed werewolf. They're like the least physically capable, and they're kind of like outcasts. They're like bastard children. They're not supposed to exist.
What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I was thinking about the same thing actually when you brought that up. But theories are it's a deep rabbit hole. I'm trying to wrap my mind around all that, and I just can't come up with any theories just yet. Well,
here's the thing, Ryan. If you're going to be on Paranormal Round Table, you have to understand that me, Wolf, here are experts on all things paranormal. We've already declared it. I see him as an expert, and he sees me. So it's already been proven, unfortunately.
They've achieved paranormal knowledge nirvana.
Exactly. We have a perfect circle here that really just works out for us. And Anthony's there, too, to be there. But
he's just there by extension.
He's there to be gripey and complain and get on to us.
So when we say theories, it's really just us letting people know the possibilities, and we let you guys decide, because it would be unfair if we did it as experts.
We know the truth. We're just not going to tell you.
Yeah.
Until you figured out yourself, young grasshopper.
Think of it like this, all right? If we sat there and solved the puzzle with you, where's the fun in it? We want to give you a good time.
That's true.
So, yeah.
Well, the truth is, Ryan, none of us know crap.
Exactly.
The truth, we don't.
We're an expert in that.
We don't know Jack.
We don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, what was it? What could it be? Now, here's another element I'm going to talk about on the show tonight, and I was going to save this one, but Abel had other encounters with Stripes, and it was over the years. He had that last one where he had seen it in the farmhouse or whatever. And I apologize for always saying whatever. It's a bad habit.
Well, they're drinking to it, so.
Oh, whatever.
It's drinking your non-alcoholic beverage of choice. And so what happened was years went by, and he had a vision. And in this vision, like he was like sitting on the porch, and he said he kind of, for some reason, just kind of stared into the sun, and he just started feeling like faint, and then he was like, he saw on the horizon this blue flaming light. And Stripes was kind of in the middle of it, and then Stripes slowly began to sink down, and then when he laid down, that blue light kind of went down with him, and there were all these little creatures. He looked like little men on the horizon. He said little monitos, and they were like all around Stripes, but they were all like little werewolves, and they all just spread out over the land like ants. And he said that that was it, and then he said he knew immediately what that meant. It meant that Stripes was dead, and that there was nobody that was going to rein these creatures in and give them any kind of guidance or stop them from harassing or being vile and mean, because that was their true nature. And that's what
very symbolic.
Yeah, he very much thought that too. He thought that was it. But he did see Stripes. Now that's the phenomenon we were talking about, Anthony.
Oh, you mean like the ghost of Stripes?
Yeah, because they think he was a ghost, because for a long time, Abel would see him. Sometimes he would see him out near his barn, and he would see him just kind of standing there looking at him, and he always had these like kind of forlorn look on his face, and kind of crestfallen for whatever reason. And then he would just kind of fade away. And then one time he saw him, like he was driving out of his driveway, and he stepped on the brakes, and he could have swore he saw him laying in the road. And he got out of his vehicle, and he was staring right at him. And then he said he kind of lifted his head, and he just kind of wrinkled, like the way he said, he just kind of wrinkled up and disappeared. And that happened a few times. And
I think what that is him protecting Abel.
Yeah, I think he did. I think he did too, because he said that a couple times there were weird things and noises and bumps around his house, and he knew that Stripes was gone. But that once he believes that Stripes actually manifested. Now, this is what was told to me by Andrew's wife, was that Abel told her right before he died that Stripes had defended him, like etherically, like spiritually, like he had fought off one of these other dogmen had gotten too close to his house. And he said that he heard a whimpering, whining, and like a growling noise. And he looked out of his bedroom window, and by this old oak tree where Stripes used to play, like he was holding him down and biting something. And he said that thing got up and ran and flipped over a fence and was gone. And he said that he didn't even get a real good look at it. He said for all he knows, it might have just been a really large dog, but he was fairly convinced that it was one of these dogmen. And they don't call them dogmen, but these hombre lobos, as they call them. And he said that he looked and he saw Stripes for a second. Then he went to put his glasses on, to get a better look. And he said he was gone, but he said he knew it was him. He goes, I'd recognize him anywhere, Until Abel died, he really didn't wear prescription glasses. He had pretty good eyes, so he just was going to try to get a better look. It's not like something where he saw, Mr. Magoo. No, he had good eyesight. I asked about that. These people were very healthy. They live on a farm, a ranch, for years, and they eat right.
They work all the time too.
All the time. Yeah, they live to be in their 80s, 90s.
I mean, God rest his soul, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was working until the very last minute.
Yeah, him and Adam both. They did. Adam died on his tractor.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
And
that's just how they were raised. I mean, they wouldn't have it any other way, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good ethics, and of course we know from working with these people that they're very hardworking people, And Jerry's, just, he owns that company. He's always working. He works very hard, and Joe works for him, and so does Robbie. But it was a good thing we were able to meet these people and get to know them, and. But the thing about Joe too is that these encounters went on and on, just little small things here and there, nothing else that was too dramatic. Except there was one other encounter that he had. He was working at a job. It took a while for him to get back to where he would work by himself. He was working a 2-man job, and this happened out near Lockhart, Texas. And he was out there doing a job. There again, he was doing a job for a friend. He said, maybe I should just stop helping friends and I won't be attacked. But he said that this friend of his, they were working, and then he said that the friend was like, I'm going to go run into town real quick and grab some Whataburger or grab a burger or whatever. I don't know what he was going. He didn't say Whataburger, but I'm assuming that's what it was.
In Texas.
Texas, it's Whataburger. Yeah. And so he said, I'm going to go grab us a burger. And so the other guy said, I'll ride with you because he was tired or whatever. And they had to go and run into town and get something else too. So he said they were gone for a while. He goes, wait, how long are y'all going to be gone? Because it wasn't dark yet. And he said, you guys, don't stay gone too long. And he said, sure enough, it started getting dark, and he was like, oh my gosh. And these dudes were gone, and he was like calling them, and they're like, we'll be there soon. And he's way out in the middle of the country by himself. So he thought, you know what, I need to relax. And now he does have to take a prescription now because he's got anxiety real bad. And so he said he took his prescription and he sat down on the couch. He said next thing you know, he was asleep. And he said the TV came on real loud, just blaring loud. And when he opened his eyes, he just like the TV, there was a guy on a show. This was so weird. And he said it was like an old black and white program. And he couldn't remember exactly who it was on the program. But he said it was a famous actor. And he couldn't remember if it was Gary Cooper or what's the other guy from It's a Wonderful Life? He said his name too. I forgot his name. But anyways, Jimmy Stewart. I think it's Jimmy Stewart. He goes, it was either Jimmy Stewart or Gary Cooper, one of those guys. And he was like, look over there. And he said the guy kind of looks to the left. And he said that he looked to his right, which would have been the actor's left. And he said he looked out the window and there was this thing. And he said, this is not a dream. This was wide awake. And he said, there was this thing that just walked by the window. And he said it had like really long mane on its back. And it was a different creature than the one that had harassed him when he was doing the job out near Wimberley. And he said that he saw it walk right by the window, and he was like, whoa, what the heck? And so he jumped up, and, he didn't know what to do. The back door was wide open.
Did they take the only vehicle, or was there another?
Yeah. They took the truck, the vehicle. They all came and rolled together. So they took the vehicle, and so they were doing this job because this was actually what do you call it? One of those they were going to resell or whatever, like flip.
Flip.
And so there was no other vehicle, and he said that he saw it clear as day. And then they pulled back into the driveway right then, and he was just standing there frozen. And then they came in, kind of joking, talking, laughing. And he was like telling them, shh, be quiet. There's something in the backyard. And they were like, oh, okay, whatever. And when the one friend who's worked with them before had heard this story about how this thing tried to attack him, and he didn't really know what to believe. But then they were also mutuals with that guy, Carlos, that was on the bike ride with him. So he did kind of believe because Carlos told him what happened to them. So then he's like, so you think it's one of those things? He goes, I know it is. I just saw it. It was like brown and brownish black, and it walked in front of the door, back door. And he's like, why is the back door wide open? He goes, I don't know. Maybe the thing opened the door. I don't know. He said, right then they heard this loud growl, like a roar coming from the backyard. And he said it might have been his imagination at that point because it scared him so bad. But he said, I could have swore the house shook. And he said, we all felt it like in our chest. And he said that the other guy got so scared he dropped the bag of food and just laid there on the ground, And the other dude said that he had like a bad stomach ache from it and chest pains. And Joe said the same thing. He said that the next day they all had like sore throats and they felt like like a pain in their throat, and in their necks. And he said that it was weird. And he said that they all just they picked up their friend. They all just ran out the front door. And as they were pulling out and they were getting ready to drive, this thing ran right up to the truck. And he said that nobody even looked nobody looked at it. Like they just all stared straight ahead, like almost like in an agreement mentally that not look at it. And they just drove away. And he was like, did you see? He goes, yeah, what that crap was right there. Yeah, I saw it. And he was like, I didn't look at it. I just ignored it, but I saw it in my peripheral. And he's like, what was that? And he was like, I don't know. It's one of these things. So he's pretty convinced that they were following him, and eventually he moved, and now he lives closer to San Antonio and more toward the city, so he moved way to South San Antonio to get away from these things because he said that since he's been living down there, he hasn't been harassed. He lives in a suburban neighborhood now, and he hasn't really had any problems.
Seems like that these things wait till they're isolated to start harassing
to make their move.
Yeah. It's like a family curse or something, maybe.
Yeah, and it could stem from all that stuff that went on, back with but the same thing is if it was family, just a bloodline, then that would be one thing. But you got to realize this is happening to Shane too, who's a neighbor of theirs out there in the Hernandez Ranch area. So when you got Shane and all the problems that he's had, now I'm going to go through eventually. We're going to go through more and more episodes, and we're going to talk about the experiences of all these different people that have had these experiences out there. They're just normal people that are not interested in fame or being, they just want to work their jobs and live their lives.
Yeah, that's why they wouldn't even let us use their real names.
Yeah, and I had a couple of them on my Facebook at one time, and I told them to get off the Facebook because I was afraid people might find them, through
bother them.
Though they were right there. I mean, they were on my Facebook for a long time, and they were real people. I mean, they had their real names on there. I mean, and so nobody, ever picked up on who they were.
And that's not just for them. The last thing we want is anyone to bother any of our guests. We love our anonymity. Like we appreciate those who want to come up and talk on here and be very forthwith with their stories
open about it
and open. But we also, the reason why we're here is because we want to help those who can't do that and who don't want to be out there and who don't want to put their public information out there. We have it on our website all the time, is that we're here to tell the stories that you don't really feel comfortable doing.
Yeah, and we're cool. Even when people do give me their real names, a lot of times we don't use it. Like we'll go over it and there's no point in telling it because I'll ask them, do you want me to know? They'll kind of go, and then I'll just be like, what, don't worry about it. It's better just safe than sorry. We don't even. But because some people are cool with it, but like we ate dinner with with the guy, you know, from Colorado, and
nice guy,
and he was like, I'm going to give you my story, and I think he's actually going to come on the show and tell his amazing story, but he wants to use a different name because he works for a big company, and he's worried about that. He was here in business. And folks, if you're ever in the Austin area or in Central Texas or whatever, and you want to eat dinner with us or look me up or whatever, you know, just hit me up. If you're a fan, you know, of the show and you want to eat dinner, you want to hang out or something, I'm up for that. You know, if I'm not doing anything, I try to be open and personable and friendly with my guests and with my listeners. We've gotten together with like, you know, a few guests and our few listeners, I mean, and we've gone out and done things with people.
Yeah, I mean, despite the fact that, you know, we're such amazing people, we are actual people, so we don't. I know it will be a little difficult coming up to, you know, us, but we appreciate it. And
you're going to be so starstruck.
Exactly. I didn't want to say that because it sounds a little conceited, but yes, I know that it would be difficult to be blinded by our aura of brightness and experts.
Good God.
But anyway, like Wolf said, you know, we're not so stuck up that we're against, you know, meeting people like that. And I was wearing my PRT shirt, and I love going to the post office and they see it and they recognize me, and I'll go in there sometimes when you want me to send in the what's it called, the
giveaway
the giveaway, yeah, the giveaway stuff, and I go in there and I hear them listening to the show and they recognize me, and it feels good. So it definitely is a boost of ego sometimes when I'm having a bad day to know.
So you're telling me people at the post office know you?
Well, they don't know me specifically, but they know I'm on the show. I mean, they
because you told them. Because you told them.
Because you told them. Don't say it's on me.
Oh, you're talking about the postal annex? Yes, absolutely. Shout out to them, by the way.
Like, oh yeah, you're that sleepy guy on the show.
Yeah, I'm the one who. I'm the other guy. That's usually.
Also, shout out to the girl at Target. Oh my gosh, my wife was supposed to be here tonight, and she had her name. We were going to shout out to her because she carded us at Target, and we were like, oh my gosh. I was like, do we look young? And she was like, not really. And I'm like, what? She's like, I'm just doing my job. And I was like, she's like, you're really just creepy old people. But anyways, no, I'm just kidding. She didn't say that, but she did. I said, do we look like we're, you know, we need to be carded? She's like, no, not really. And I'm like, darn. And I was like, well, I don't know whether she thought she was being polite or not. She's a young girl, but she was just trying to be doing her job. And we were like, you know what? I'm going to give you a shout out on the show. And I gave her a business card. And she's like, oh, you're in the paranormal show? I was like, yeah. So she was all like, oh, that's cool. I'd like to check it out. So
wow. So you lied to a poor Target girl who was just doing her job.
How did I lie, sir?
Oh, I thought you were going to give a better shout out than that. I mean, you didn't even mention anything.
Can't remember her name. I can't remember her name. It was started with an L. That's all I remember. If she's listening, she'll be like, hey, that was me.
Yeah, I was going to say, if she listens, she knows who she is.
Yes, okay. Exactly. My wife was the one that had that information, and she had a lot of stuff she wanted to talk about too. But
it's unfortunate. I mean,
she couldn't make it. Her back, she tried, and Ryan can attest to this. We all know that she started. We did first 15 minutes of the show, guys.
Yeah,
and we had to start over because
you guys missed a lot of jokes on that. I mean, I had some hitters on those 15 minutes.
Not really, but that's what.
Yeah, we had some great stuff there.
Yeah, Ryan was there. He can attest to it.
Actually, you know what, Ryan, y'all did. I'm just messing with you, dude. You guys did, but it's too bad.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather her be at home and be safe and be relaxed.
She was a lot of.
She's. I could just see there and see her just
She was afraid of disappointing everybody, and I was like, you did, honey, but it's okay, and I just drove off.
Oh, Josh.
I was like, I was just joshing her.
Yeah, I mean, you guys came back pretty quick, so I'm assuming you just left her, down the street again
at the 7-Eleven.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, you can walk home. It's 4 miles. What are you crying about? Yeah, oh, broken back.
Yeah,
okay.
Her back is hurting, not her legs. So.
Yeah, it's like you're supposed to help me pick up this pile of bricks. Hey, 50-50. It's an equal partnership. Okay.
Exactly.
My back was hurting a little bit too.
You get these pile of bricks, and when the next time we have to grab a pile of bricks, I got it. I promise.
She's actually going to be building my house for me. That's what people at home are like. We're not going to listen to Josh Turner no more. He's a horrible misogynist,
a horrible husband.
Yeah, horrible. So
just
Ryan,
terrible person altogether.
Ryan, let me ask you. You've been pretty quiet but you said you had some questions for me. So what do you got? You want to throw them at me?
It's funny because we were actually talking about this while you were bringing Nellie home. You kind of rendered my questions moot, man.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I
was going to ask about stripes, but
Yeah,
we
me
need
and
to
him
now.
were talking about like where we didn't want to like have the same questions and go back and forth and like ruin out for each other. So we just discuss what our questions were, and we decided that stripes was very important, and that we felt like in this particular moment that was a question that we really want to bring up about like what was going on with his
Yeah, we were theorizing like malnutrition and whatnot.
malnutrition
And
or
his
like what was
genealogy.
going on exactly.
Yeah.
I have a question about stripes. Obviously, on the Hernandez Ranch, there's a population of these things outside of stripes, or including stripes. So, were they aware of any offspring that he had?
Yeah, actually, yeah, because if you go and you listen, I think it's 136 or 137. I haven't listened to them recently, but you guys have. So, I mean, you can tell me there was a story that I covered where Stripes was with a mate, and he did have a litter of little.
That answered one of our questions. So,
Yeah, and I believe I told that story. I think it was where Abel was deer hunting, or he was out turkey hunting. I can't remember exactly, but he told me he ducked into a barn and they were in there, and he said that there was because it was raining. He said that it was raining, and he said he felt his presence. Like he said that there was a very strong spiritual connection between him and this creature, but he did have to admit that he was an anomaly. He was not. They were not nice to people, and he believed that they were very much on the menu, and that Stripes kind of created a Pax Romana, if you will, where they didn't really mess with them, and there was a good 20, 30 years of peace where they didn't really mess with anybody.
So he was like a werewolf Octavian or Augustus.
Augustus, yeah. But he did say that after that was over with, there was a lot of stuff that went on. Now, here's an interesting story, and I'm going to get into this eventually, but I'll give you a little teaser. Because the bull, do you remember the bull that cornered Robbie?
I remember.
Robbie, yeah.
The bull that's
Simon.
scary enough to scare away
Oh my gosh.
Dogman.
Simon is now, he's an entity unto himself. There was a lot of stories that I got about Simon. He kept coming up, and there was like Linda had said that, which was Andrew's wife. She had said something about Simon, and then Jerry had said something about Simon, and I said, what's the deal with this bull? So I started, after the first or second, third interview, I started asking everybody else about that, if they had any stories about this bull. Because Noah told me this story. Now it's, and it's going to take away from when I tell his encounters that he's had since the whole stripes thing ended. Noah told me that he came outside to check on his bull one night because he heard a bunch of noise. And that Simon literally was goring one of these Dogman type creatures. He said he had it up against the fence post and it was stuffed underneath, like its leg was broken and you could see it. It was caught underneath the barbed wire, and that bull was just hammering him. And he said that there were what looked like a couple of more that were coming up over the horizon. There's a hill right there, and that looked like they were coming to try to help it. And then he opened fire on them because, of course, he's a gun nut. He's a fanatic, I mean, I was talking to him with Scorpion, and all he talked about was guns. We were like, wow.
Is this the one where like halfway through he just starts firing off?
Yeah, he started shooting, and I'm sitting there and I'm going down Mopac. I'm like, oh my God, what was that? He's like, that's an AR-15. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I get that, but why? I mean, I'm driving. I'm just like, I had to pull over. My ears almost burst. I'm in rush hour traffic talking to this maniac. No offense to you, if you're listening, which I don't think you will be because you don't have a TV. So you probably didn't listen to this.
Maniac is a strong word. I think he's just, an old soul.
No, his family tells me that he's pretty unhinged.
Yeah, he's a crazy one.
He's a crazy Vietnam vet, but he's pretty... So he said he opened fire on him.
He just wants to be left alone. So
yeah, he does. Very much so. And he's very paranoid too. But, he opened fire and these things, they ran off. And he said that he went out there and he called Simon. Simon came to him because Simon is like a pet to him, Mm-hmm. But it's a prize bull. He's sired a lot of offspring. He's had several prize bulls that he's been bred for, and so he's an amazing animal. But this Dogman creature was there, and he said he went back inside to get a better flashlight, whatever, and he came out and he had his stuff and he was going to inspect this creature, and it was gone. So it either managed to get away or the other ones came and rescued it.
Yeah, they probably dragged it away.
Yeah, and he said that this wasn't the only thing that had happened. Simon also was responsible for killing a horse. There was a horse. There were these two cowboys. You've been to the rodeo with me, Anthony. You've seen how they do it, and they were trying to get the bull to get him to maneuver him to go to another pen, to get him to another area so they could take him to breed. So it was always a big chore. And so it's something that Simon didn't want to do. He didn't like getting into the, he didn't like getting put in the corral and then sent into the trailer. There was always like a big drama with this bull. He's just like, he runs around and he hits the trailer and tries to hit everybody. And so it was a big chore, a big task. So he had to have these two cowboys that would come out there and they'd, get him in there, And so Simon decided to start kicking like he was being ridden. Like he was, how
bucking,
high their back legs. Yeah. He was bucking. So he bucked one of those horses in the neck. And it didn't kill that horse, but it knocked him onto the other horse and it broke that horse's leg. And when Simon turned, he was going for the guy. The cowboy got up off the horse and he was like, oh my gosh, he's prone. And this bull just charged right at him. And the horse tried to get up at the last minute, but its leg was busted. And before it went back down, Simon gored it right in there and just killed it. I mean, so this bull was he's a monster. He's an absolute monster. They've seen him just, tear up all kinds of stuff, go after other bulls. He's gotten into pastures and chased horses around. He's a bad boy. I mean, and they gave me story after this of this bull. So I thought I would tell that the interesting part about Simon. He was such a villain. He's dead now. He died recently, but he lived a long time for a bull. I mean, it was like 15, 16 years. And I mean, hard at work being a mean son of a gun.
You bet those Dogman are happy he's gone now.
Yeah, and that was one thing that Noah said, that he kind of had him right there as a buffer. That they would never really come out and mess with him too much, and he thought one of them was trying to sneak through, and that's what he said. And he said that he killed it. And when I asked Jerry about that story, and Jerry says, "Well, that's what he claims," but he goes, "I never saw it. I didn't see anything about it." But then again, Noah's a weird guy, so we only have his word on that. But I mean, he didn't give me any real fantastical stories out of everybody else. It was just that one and one other that he had that he was going to share with me. But, what are we doing on time?
Hour and a half. Yeah. So I can go ahead and I'll give you Noah's other encounter that he had. He claims to have shot one of these things. He was driving along, going down this gravel road that kind of cuts off, and then you kind of go up this little hill, and then you come down to this little valley, and that's how you get to where he lives. And that part, he comes through the back way. And so he was going down that gravel road, and he said he was hauling, man. He was drunk. He had been drinking, moonshine, what he said, with a buddy of his down the road, who's another crazy Vietnam vet, who I did speak to very briefly when I was on the phone with him. His name is Rodney. He's also a reclusive, crazy guy, just trying to talk to him for about 5 minutes, and all he wanted to know was if I was into guns, and I was just like, oh yeah, okay, and just whatever, and so he's like, "You ain't one of those comic booky freaks, are you?" And I'm like, no. I'm like, no, that's Ryan. I was like, I was like, you know what? I don't mind comic books, but I didn't tell that guy. I was just like, no, I'm into guns, and what do you do? And he's like, tobacco and women. Yeah, me too. No, I'm just kidding. I was like, whatever you're into, man. That's tobacco, whatever floats your boat, dude. And,
I love it's just swallowing dip, I guess. Yeah, just whatever to fit in, right?
Yep. So I dipped for years, though, So I told the guy, I said, yeah, absolutely. I'm into the Second Amendment. I'm into the First Amendment. Yeah, whatever. I mean, it's all good. And so that was our conversation. And I was like, had you seen any of these creatures? He's like, nope. And that was it. And that was all we talked about. And that was the end of that.
Short, sweet, and to the point.
To the point.
I like it.
Very pragmatic. And so Noah got on the phone and he was like, that's my friend, And he goes, so we were driving along, whatever. And Rodney was like, I wasn't with you. And Noah was like, yeah, you were. And Noah was like, they start arguing back and forth. And then Rodney's like, oh yeah, I think I passed out. And so that's the kind of, friendship they have or whatever. And he said, we were going back to my place, to pick up something or whatever, some ammunition or whatever. And he was so drunk. And he said it was about 8, 9 at night. And they'll stay out there and they'll just pop off rounds all night, messing around. And he said that one of these things was hunched over and it looked like it was feeding on something. And he said that he got, up to the creature. He slowed down and he put the brights on it and he tried to wake up Rodney, but Rodney was out. And then Rodney claims he wasn't even there, but then he said he was there. So I don't even know, about that part of it. He said he tried to wake him up and he said he was like, wake up. And so then he gets out of the truck Okay. And which is obviously this thing is not even that far away from him. He said maybe 30 yards, 40 yards. And he said he grabbed one of his rifles and he just started opening fire on it and it blazed over the top of it and then it hit it in the back. He said the thing kind of flinched and then got up, stared back at him, looked both ways, and then ran into the woods. Didn't even like hop and jump and like move. And he said that it was AR-15 rounds, according to what he was telling me. And he said, I popped it right in the back. And he said he just kind of see the muscle twitch, you know, and he goes, I know that these things can be killed. He goes, he said a friend of his guaranteed 100% he killed at least one or two of them. But he said that one, he's like, sometimes you'll hit them and they don't even flinch. They'll go away, but you're not going to stop them. You know, you're not going to kill them. And, you know, when Shane had his incident, you know, he had told me, when I talked to him shortly after I talked to Noah, you know, and Shane had said that he believes that when he had his incident where he shot it with 357, he thinks he hit it at least twice and the bullet might have just went right through it. Not like it was an apparition, but like it just pierced it and went through it because he did see little blood over there, but he kind of thought it might have been the horse, you know.
Do you think that maybe going back to a theory you had earlier about the dimensional travel and how the longer they stay here, the more
flesh and blood they become?
Do you think that maybe that's the difference? There's the length in that, like some bullets will just hit them and it's hitting something, but it doesn't, it's not a fully, you know, flesh and blood creature yet. So it's just hitting the impact and just bouncing off. But they know that could damage them if it's like repeated. So they just leave. But obviously it doesn't affect them because they know that, you know, they're mostly ethereal at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just it's so curious to think about like what's the life cycle of one of these creatures? Like how, you know, it really is. I just want to know that a little bit. It's like how do you go about just, you know, your life? Like what is?
Well, each creature lives approximately 21.5 years. They do run around in 4-man packs called units. I have no idea. What is? I'm getting the same stuff you are.
This is just my question. I mean,
they also like Lord of the Rings very much.
They do. They do.
I mean, I wouldn't be a fan of them if they didn't. So that's all. I'm saying.
Like the orcs because they are the bad guys.
That's not.
Huge Tolkien fans.
Yeah. I don't know.
Obviously, I know you don't know. I'm not asking you. I'm just saying.
You're just throwing it out there.
I'm throwing it out there.
For the
Like,
audience.
That's what I really want. Like that's. I guess it's like my biggest question about this whole everything of Dogman is just like I want to know. I don't want to know where they are, where they come from. I just want to know their life cycle. Like
I want to know what you're thinking. Yeah. Okay. Well, you know, I can't tell you.
Yeah, I know. I know you can't. Despite being an expert, you disappointed me once again.
I think this show has exposed that I am not an expert.
Oh, I could have told you that.
You're fired now, Josh.
Oh my God, you're fired. So, Anthony, was that all the questions you had? Was just the one about the ghost Stripes?
You said that Stripes had offspring. So did the Hernandez family ever interact with any of these offspring? Like, I guess what I'm getting at is, were there ever, after Stripes, were there ever any other benevolent
Stripes
Dogman?
number 2?
There were flesh and blood offspring that looked like him, but they were never social. They had seen them,
but they never caused any trouble either. Did they?
No, actually, yeah, that's not true. And we'll get into that eventually because I'm going to get into Robbie's encounters and Jerry's encounters, and that's not something we're going to do on this show. It's going to be in a future show, and we're going to get into some things that actually their grandfather had never talked about before. This is never before told until I started doing the research, you know, in the last 2 years. You know, now Lupe was the one they got all the information from because Adam Sr. would never talk about it. But their dad, Adam Jr., which is the father of Andrew, Noah, Abel, Joe, and Adam. Now he actually, Adam Jr., the second Adam, because the third Adam would have been his son. Now he actually did come forward before he died, and he did talk a little bit, and he talked to Andrew. And Andrew had encounters too, and of course, if you go back and you listen to the Dogman Encounters episodes, Andrew never talked about his, but he did recently, and I got them through Jerry. Andrew, he told Jerry and Robbie, his sons, and Andre, these stories. Still never got anything out of Andre. He's pretty quiet about it, but Robbie and Jerry did tell me the things that Andrew had told them, and we're going to get into that on another show. So we have all those people's encounters, and then what Adam Jr. had finally confessed to Andrew before he died, because Andrew was kind of like his favorite son, because he was the youngest for a long time until JoJo came along. JoJo came along when he was like a 50-year-old man. So JoJo did not have a whole lot of time with his parents, about 20 years, 25
That's probably
years.
because he didn't have the patience for JoJo.
Yeah, and by that point, JoJo was just like, he was wild, and his parents couldn't control him, and so his brothers had to rein him in a lot. That's why he ended up in jail. Not talking crap, Joe. I'm just being honest.
Factual.
Being factual. I mean, you admitted that. The thing is, though, Andrew just had a lot of crazy stuff that happened, and so did Adam Jr., and then, of course, Andrew's sons, Robbie and Jerry. Jerry, the guy that owns the company that we met him. He's one of the trades. And, so he basically told us a lot of stuff. We got a lot more meat on the bone left after this episode. But there was some trouble with his offspring, the ones that looked like him. Noah, of course, never trusted. Stripes was already gone when he got back, but he never trusted the whole thing. And Abel's wife, his late wife, had told him, that that she was scared of it. She was scared of him. Thought that one day it could turn on him, because it's like a wild animal with a brain, like all animals have brains, but I mean like a human-like brain. And she was
a wild animal with intellect.
Yeah, with a smart, intelligent intellect, and so she was afraid of it, but gradually warmed up to it, and to him, and eventually, Noah though never trusted it when it would come close to the property. He actually shot at him, and Abel and him didn't speak for a while because of that. And he told him, "Why are you shooting at my friend?" He goes, "That thing's not your friend." And he's like, "The other ones aren't our friends because they are what they are. Because with that one,
I raised him.
Yeah. He's mine, And JoJo kept telling him this, or Joe and Noah kept telling him, this isn't a pet, okay? And JoJo kept telling him it was like something in his imagination, because he really wanted to believe that Noah and Abel were just crazy. Like they're just seeing, these critters out there, and Joe was like happy to live in his little cocoon of mental,
obliviousness.
Obliviousness, willful ignorance.
Ignorance is bliss.
Is being willfully ignorant, And so he was perfectly content with that, and so he told me, he goes, well, Adam and Andrew never talk about these creatures, or why are you guys always talking about them? He goes, well, Adam doesn't talk about them because Adam was a very, very religious, God-fearing man who believed they were demonic and not to speak of them, like a lot of Latinos. And Andrew was one of those people who just kept it very tight-lipped until he was getting older, and then as he was close to dying, he told Robbie and Jerry and everything stories and then stuff that his dad had told him. So that was Adam Jr. So, yeah, there were incidents with their offspring. They one of them in particular that looked like Stripes but without the stripes. Actually, was the one that assaulted Cody, which would have been Shane's brother. Now Shane they're the Hitchens. Shane Hitchens and his family, that was originally...
They were the ones that owned the
They were the
property.
original owners,
Okay.
yeah. And the Hernandez family came to work for them in the form of Adam Sr. And that happened, years ago, like turn of the century. I mean, that's how long they've been together. These two families been intertwined. And so they sold off part of that land, and then they gave away part of that land to Adam Jr. because they had been longtime vaqueros working for them. And so they went through the wars where they got their place ransacked and destroyed, and all that other stuff happened, and then the sheriff's department didn't do nothing to help them, but give them a hard time. So they became very mistrusting of law enforcement and government agents that never really seemed to do anything but harass them. And ask a bunch of questions. And so anyways, what ended up happening with these people is that they had this whole big property, and it got partitioned off into different sections. And, Cody was one of them. He got a piece of it. But Shane was the main benefactor of the will because Cody had some problems. He was a drunk. He drank a lot. Not to call him a drunk, but he was an alcoholic. He had some in and out of rehab type stuff. And so Shane was the guy who, so when he got out and got clean eventually, he gave him a piece of land that he worked for Shane, which is a pretty sizable chunk of land. It's about 40 acres, 45 acres. And but Cody got attacked, and the creature that he described very much sounded like a stripes type creature, but where the stripes would have been, it was kind of grayed, like maybe it had kind of grown out and just kind of turned into like a grayed mat on, And so, and the description he gave me was pretty, like it went out, it attacked him at night when he went out to check on his chickens and his hogs. And so, but that's for another time. I'm going to tell that story eventually too. But right now, I would just like to talk about the possibility that these things could have been some sort of like cursed or some sort of, I don't know how to say it, like, because it seems very much like they were attached to that land. Now, we've gone over these weird theories of what they could have been. Could they have come from the outer space or another dimension, or could they have just been a natural creature that just lives there, which is harder for me to believe considering the things that they do, and they're so malevolent. And knowing what I've known for so long, Ryan, that's one of the reasons why I was always kind of like, at one point I was on the side of these things are flesh and blood. They've evolved here, or whatever you want to call it. And then I started to kind of change my stance. And I'll tell you right now, Vic Cundiff has even told me that a lot of times people are playing with Ouija boards and stuff when they have these encounters. I mean, I've talked to lots of people, and I've talked to Dark Waters, who's told me, that these things, he used to think they were more like flesh and blood, but they're more, there's a spiritual aspect to these things. Linda Godfrey, same thing. They've all said the same thing.
You can't deny that.
I mean, there's too many people who have kind of started out, the physical way and then said, no, maybe they're spiritual, or they're both, or they have an ability. Because think about our ancestors and how much more spiritually in tune they were than we are. And each passing generation becomes less, in tune to that.
Exactly. I mean, we don't know when these dogmen came to that piece of land. So they could have been there for a long, long time, and some of their generations could have lost that spiritual ability. And so you see a lot of that. Maybe that's why they're so attached to that land, because they've been there for a long, long time.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And so when you see some that are spiritual, it's because maybe those are new. Those are ones that are just arriving, and so they still have some of that.
Ethereal.
Yeah, maybe like their world is just there's something in their world that gives them that ability. And when they come here, they just start losing it because there's nothing here to supply them with whatever. Whatever it is. There's some energy source that we don't understand. Maybe.
I think they can be nature spirits too, because I don't really think that being malevolent disqualifies them from being some sort of nature spirits attached to that land. Because
definitely.
And the thing is, it could also be a matter of perspective, because I mean, from our perspective, they're malevolent because they're harassing this family and terrorizing them. But from their perspective, they
could just be defending themselves.
Not necessarily defending themselves, but just doing what they're made to do, is to guard that land and keep people off of it.
Because
that's what I meant, like defending themselves from trespassers.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go back and you listen to the shows on DER, I mean, there was a den. Well, I mean, there was a hole. I mean, I don't want to say because they didn't see them, but like they covered up that hole, and that could have been where they come through. That could have been the portal.
Or it could have been something that maybe a grave. It could have been something sacred to them that if they've been there a long time, there's got to be something around there that they keep. I don't know. There's got to be something there that's keeping them there, and maybe there's like these little areas that either tunnels or little special areas that they have where they either bury great people. They bury like their dead, or they use it as a special place of where it's just a sacred area, and when people are messing with it, then obviously, I can understand why they would be so aggressive and so
protective,
and so like very quickly to just attack everything there.
Yeah,
because I wouldn't want people messing with my sacred stuff too. Let's say you have something in your room that's just so precious to you, and someone just keeps coming in and breaking it. You're obviously gonna, retaliate.
Yeah, because my brother goes in my room, and every time he's in there, he breaks something.
Yeah.
If y'all know that.
We both understand.
Ryan, my brother is a nice guy. You've met him, right? Okay, so that's the rumor. That's what you think, but because you don't know him.
Yeah, that's the lie that I'm believing. Yeah.
But he goes in my room, and he's like Simon the Bull in my room. and it never fails. One of my I had all those little figurines of the DC and the Marvel. I had a bunch of them. He's broken so many of them now. My whole collection is just
Oh yeah, I mean, we were standing there
demolished.
in the doorway, and I was watching. You see Boba Fett, you see Darth Vader, you see what is it, the
bounty hunters.
The bounty hunters. Yeah, but then you see one just
Forlom's
missing an arm.
Yeah, I think it was
I'm like,
Forlom.
oh wow, that's so cool. I don't remember that in the movie, but it just me like a new edition I haven't seen yet.
Because D did something, and then I didn't do that. I know it was him because his big fat sausage fingers broke it or something, and it fell behind my card boxes. That's all right. That's all right. I deal with it. I suffer in silence.
Well, obviously not that silent.
That was the joke, my friend. I suffer in silence. But anyways, the point is, that you have these creatures, and they are able to manipulate. They're able to do things that people can't do, and I honestly believe that has something to do with why you can't take pictures of them clearly, why people lose pictures of them. I know 2 or 3 researchers who had pictures, and they disappeared. I mean, like literally, they. I mean, I believe them. I believe that this could actually happen because people don't realize what we're dealing with. We're not dealing with just a flesh and blood thing. They can appear as solid flesh and blood as people, and they can interact and do things because, like I said, I lived in a house that had stuff that went on, and on a daily basis. I mean, it wasn't just me. I wasn't like experiencing something every day, but other people were experiencing things too. And we know, I know, and they know that these things could manipulate and they could appear as physical beings. I mean, there was this whole doppelganger thing going on in my house. If you go back to the early episodes of this show of PRT and you listen, I brought several guests on too to talk about, and my brother was one of them, to talk about living in that house. And a lot of my friends can attest to this. They've told Nellie and they've told you, Anthony and Tony, what it was like. And and these are big, tough, strong guys like, Jack and Squid, Jerome. They're not weaklings. And of course, y'all know Willie passed away in May, but these guys were telling the truth. I mean, they were scared. I mean, and you would see like, Pete said he thought he saw D, and of course Scorp thought he saw me, and I thought I saw Squid, and it wasn't them. It was flesh and blood as it could be. I even saw Squid like messing with like a pan, in the kitchen, and I was like, and then it wasn't him. I mean, it's so bizarre, like, but you can see that there was water running. I mean, how do you explain that? It's a physical manifestation, but it's obviously spiritual in nature, but it can manipulate physical things. And so you can't be deceived and just be like, oh, that's just a flesh and blood thing, I was talking to a deer hunter, and he lived down near, he was hunting down South Texas. He was from Mathis. And if anybody knows, that's near Corpus. It's a pretty cool area. And there'd be a nice lake out there, and then you're close to the ocean too. And he was out there and he was fishing. And it was actually deer season too. And so he was fishing, and he saw this big buck come out of the clearing, just go to get a drink. And he's like, "Oh man!" So he had his rifle right there with him, ready to go. And he said, "I had a 30-06 because he hit his other rifle. He had his other rifle, but it wasn't loaded." He was like, "I was a better shot with that one, but it wasn't loaded." And he was like, so I was like, "Oh gosh, I'm gonna take a shot," So he goes, he starts getting ready. He's ready to aim, and then the thing just kind of goes to leap and just turns in one motion and goes to leap. And he said it vanished in thin air. He said it just completely vanished. I mean, it was a deer, it was a buck, and he said it was a big buck, And he said it was just gone, like it just vanished.
Well, I've talked to you about it before, maybe like little time capsules or time little areas. I mentioned it before, how I thought like maybe it's possible that little spaces have just time, or like time is just differently to where certain events just happen over and over and over again. And the things that are in it just don't realize what's going on. Mm-hmm. And it's just like it's a moment in time that's just frozen, that it repeats itself, and maybe we just haven't realized it because we haven't really found the cycle of repeating, like what that cycle is. So yeah, that maybe like right when he was about to shoot that deer just went back to normal.
The interesting thing to me was that he said he was going for his other rifle because that was the better rifle. And then the old 30-06, of course, everybody knows it kicks like a mule. Mm-hmm. And, if you got another rifle there, a 22-250 or whatever you got, and I don't remember exactly what he said it was, but he said, I was going for that one. I thought, oh, it's not loaded. because he had been drinking and he was sitting there fishing and he thought, if I get lucky and a buck comes along or a hog, it's always hogs. You can kill hogs all year long in Texas.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm gonna take a shot, and he was like, I forgot to they'll pay you a bounty. Yeah. But he's like, I forgot to load it, so he's like, well, I'm gonna go for this other one. He said, and that hesitation of time gave that buck the ability to turn, but he thought, oh man, I missed my opportunity, but it just vanished in front of his eyes. Now, what if he wouldn't have hesitated and he'd have picked up the 30-aught and got it? Would he have killed it? Would it have been dead? Like, or would it just have gone through it? You see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
That is the question. That's kind of a mind warping question. And he said that weird hesitation, was all it took. And then he was like, oh man.
I guess it would depend on how is the deer affecting its environment?
Here's another question. Yeah. How is it affecting the environment? How is this guy, what if he would have had, because he had a buddy with him that was supposed to be with him, which ended up showing up late, and he said that and I asked the question to him, I was like, what if your buddy Cliff, that was his friend's name, I was like, what if he would have been with you? Would he have seen the deer too? Would it have vanished in front of both their eyes? Because, I got a Sasquatch encounter out of Nebraska. This happened near Lincoln. And so they were telling me there was the Sasquatch came out of a corn stalks, and there were two women. I mean, there were two couples, two males, two females. And the one husband and wife were walking ahead, and the sister-in-law and the brother were there, and they were like, "Hey, look at that!" And they first thought it was like they couldn't tell what it was. They thought it was like a gorilla. They said, "Look, it's like a gorilla!" And this thing stood up and walked on its hind legs, very much like a human. And they thought their minds were kind of like, "Whoa!" It was a Sasquatch. It was obviously clear as day. It was a Sasquatch. And while they were all staring at it, there were 4 people staring at it. It just started to kind of vibrate and shake, and then it just disappeared. And then that was weird. So I mean, like you get that story as a real brief encounter, but I mean, you get that whole what these Dogman do. They get this weird, that story. There was one in Linda Godfrey's book where it shimmied and kind of, we've heard that too, Anthony, Tony. Where they kind of shimmy and then they disappear. Like Lon Strickler talked about them doing this. They had this weird silverish glow to them. And then the one I got out by Lake Travis was a greenish glow, which is very weird. And then, of course, in Linda's book, it was like a mist. It came up near its feet. And so you get these weird, and then sometimes you'll get these things, they'll vanish, Do
you think it's like that tree thing to where it's like if a tree falls in the forest and you're not around to hear it, doesn't make any noise? Does it actually make any noise? Is it like if you're with someone, then you miss out on a lot of these supernatural abilities because of the fact that you're not by yourself.
Because you have to have a dual perspective.
Exactly, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think it's something like that? What do you think, Anthony?
I have no idea.
Do you have any theories on maybe how that could be possible? I mean, I kind of threw out the time thing because I always I believe in a time loop. I believe it's possible that there's certain events that just can't be explained.
When it comes to how these things are disappearing, I remember I read this one theory in a book. I think it was a David Icke book.
Oh, Tales from the Time Loop.
Yeah, Tales from the Time Loop, about how our eyes can perceive a certain range of frequencies of vibration, and anything that vibrates below or above that range, we can't physically perceive it. So if an entity vibrates at within a range that we can perceive, and then they can somehow change the range at which they vibrate, like the frequency that they vibrate at, to go outside that range, then it would look to us like they just vanished, like they just disappeared.
Well, the Glimmer Man.
Yeah, but think of the Glimmer Man. A deer, I don't know if a deer would be able to do something like that.
That has to be something.
A deer, I feel like it would have been caught in something. So yeah, maybe the vibration thing is correct. Maybe that little area has this weird vibration effect, and that deer is just stuck in it. And maybe at that moment
you also get stories of shapeshifter deer.
Oh yeah,
I didn't even think of that. I mean, I'm just so stuck on these time loops that I really just enjoy that. But yeah, shapeshifter deer.
Mark DeLeon, he was on. He was on The Fringe at one point, and he had talked about. And I only listened to part of that one because he's a friend of mine, and he told me he was going to be on or whatever. And he actually mentioned me in that. I believe in that episode, and we were talking about the different and me and him have had conversations a little bit about stuff, But he had talked about these deer that had stood up and walked on their hind legs, and I'd heard stories of that out near Joppa, the deer leash where my family used to live near, and they were talking about these deer that they would see, and they would literally go hop up on two legs and then go over a fence. And it was just the weirdest thing. But they just looked like regular deer, but they could walk on two legs.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, because I see a lot of pictures of Wendigos, and they usually have like horns, and they look like they have like a deer.
Well,
kind of
and I'm
face.
going to get into that eventually. In fact, I just got a shipment of books from Chad Lewis, and one of his famous books is about Wendigos, and I'm going to read it and then get him on the show.
Wendigos.
But yeah, one of the things, and Ryan, you know a lot about Wendigos. One of the things is that the antlers, that was a later addition.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I
mean,
didn't know
they
that.
came.
I think the rake is the Wendigo.
Oh, really? Yeah, because it always seemed I didn't understand what the point of having deer horns on a
Yeah, I think that the
Wendigo
whole
would be.
there was a creature that was one of the children of Loki, which to me would just be a Nephilim, but it was depicted as having like 6 legs, hooves. It was very creepy.
There's a movie.
The Ritual.
The Ritual. Yeah. It's
What is it?
actually a child of Loki, too. I think this is exactly the creature you're talking about.
Okay, yeah, because I
It's
know the
called
legend. The
Ritual.
legend is he had a multi-legged horse for a son, and then it could transform and it have like a moose's head or something. It was weird. It was a very weird story. It was like very, very much like a Nephilim. I got a guy that I actually share the office with, and his name is Nick, and actually we're here recording in the studio, and
he's writing right now.
yeah, he's in there writing.
We're trying to be
He's
quiet,
writing a
not
book,
bother him too much.
so he actually is going to come on the show pretty soon, and we're going to talk about some of these things because he believes there's a connection to all these, like I do. It all kind of fits in and ties in, and hopefully someday we can at least put some of the pieces together.
No, it's just a waiting game. I mean, eventually.
Well, everything it comes full circle eventually. Everything. Eventually if you really try, you can flesh things out. If you talk to enough people and you spend enough time researching and going over things, you can find things. So many people just give up. They don't. It's like you put the pieces together. And listen to everybody, because everybody's got a different tale to tell, and there's so many different.
Yeah, and most importantly,
versions.
keep an open mind. Once you start closing yourself off, like I did earlier with the time loop stuff, you start forgetting about these other possibilities. Like, for instance, like you mentioned, the deer, and once you start losing that, then you kind of, especially if you just get really focused on one thing, then once you start dismissing other possibilities about a subject that no one really understands, I think you start losing a bit of credibility.
Yeah, and if you shut yourself off, like so many groups have, they're just like they're just demons. That's all they are, and then and then they don't want to entertain the idea that they're anything other than that. And then you have the other side of the coin that's very
it starts conflict.
They're just physical, and they've evolved that way, which is really, really ridiculous, because I can't imagine a wolf evolving like that at all. And and the episode that we haven't dropped yet, still, Ryan, that we did with Ken Gerhard, and I'm going to have to drop that pretty soon, but. Ken was talking, and he was talking about all these extinct animals and things like that. And it was very much a cryptozoological conversation. And we're going to do another one with Scott Martis. Scott, if you're out there, you're going to be on my show again, and we're going to talk about these water cryptids, because I have some questions for you, like that octopus thing that we researched, Ryan. And we're gonna get on there with Scott, and we're gonna chop it up, hash it up. But the thing is, you got these weird creatures that people see all over the place, and there's so many different types of things going on. It's hard to put your finger on one thing, and so many people want to just pigeonhole this whole phenomenon and say, well, it's a physical being, and whatever, and it evolved this way. And Ken Gerhard was very much in opposition to that. That Ken, says, I don't believe a wolf's going to be evolved that way. It's just not, But he does believe in the Sasquatch can evolve that way, but he doesn't know what to make of the Dogman, and then he said it's got to be something very supernatural, which is something that most of my my peers seem to believe, that there's this very supernatural element to these things, and you got to kind of put the pieces together. Just in the last few days, I've talked to 3 or 4 different researchers and 3 or 4 different authors about various subjects, but. You ask it just on the cusp. I just asked Nick Redfern. I just talked to him the other day, and I asked him just kind of on the fly. I said, "Hey, before we go," and it was completely not about this subject, But I asked him what he thought about the Anunnaki and the theories of Sitchin, and he began to kind of expound on what he thinks and whatever. Because as it would be funny that my friend Nick that shares the office with me, he writes about the metaphysical, and he is writing some of his theories, about that ancient civilizations and stuff. So I asked Redfern his opinion on it, and he kind of threw some stuff out there and gave me his opinions and whatever. And you chop it up and you go, wow, okay, so this guy believes this guy believes this guy believes this, and you kind of put it all together. And then you start throwing out the theories, and folks, you at home can decide, and you be the judge. You tell me what you think it is. And you know what? After this episode, hit me up with questions, send me emails. I'm going to, my new office, my new digs, I'm liking it. I like the new studio that we're at, and I'm going to be chopping it up and just,
it's definitely more comfortable in here.
Yeah, and we're going to be able to I'm just going to be able to pour through emails and just pour through my messengers, and I'm just going to be contacting people left and right, and I'm going to be setting up a lot of stuff. We're going to start moving towards maybe getting an extra show in every 2 weeks now. Now, maybe not 2 shows a week, but I'm going to start moving a little faster and maybe start going instead of just 1 hour a week, doing 2 hours a week, and then maybe and then have an off week, where you have just one show. And then maybe every other Tuesday, we'll do a show like every other Tuesday.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I mean, I'm down.
Yeah. And I want Ryan to be a permanent fixture. You're going to be coming in, and that, especially on that extra show, it'll be me, you, Ryan, and Tony. And we can,
definitely. I mean, me and Ryan spoke a little bit earlier today when you were dropping off Nelly, and
talking about how much you hated me.
Yeah. And we were saying how we could take over the show if we just got your secret vault of stories. And I told him I was
secret vault. You got the email. This lazy guy, Anthony can go in his room, and he can turn on that computer, and he can look at any of those emails he wants.
Yeah, but it's easier when you just work it out for me. And
exactly.
I can just steal it.
So this lazy.
I don't want that secret vault. I don't want that secret vault. I just want the one in here, the one that you make yourself and you put all together. That one seems easier to steal.
Yeah, because the thing is, we have these emails there, and I'm like, anytime you want, you can go in there and you can start plucking away at them, and let's start calling people and getting in touch with them, because that was the problem I had with my other co-host was his unwillingness to do that. Dig in and start asking questions.
Well, I've called a couple of people. I mean, it's not like
what were they pretty girls or
no? Unfortunately,
yeah, right. The one girl,
honestly,
I thought the one girl
one
was
guy in British. No,
in British.
In the British
place.
In the British place.
I remember him speaking those British words, and
he was in England.
Is that what it's called? I don't pay attention to things across water that I can't swim.
He was
across.
an England person.
He was an England man.
He was one of them.
He talked very much like this.
Yeah, that's it. That language.
Or he talked like, was it John Keegan?
I'm kidding, obviously.
The one thing you have to know about the Dogman, and I tell you what, we're gonna continue this conversation down the road, and we're gonna go back to the Hernandez Ranch again and again, because it's a very interesting place with a lot of weird phenomena that affected the people of this. Now, this guy Joe, he wasn't even on the ranch anymore. Like, he didn't even live it. His first encounter was not on the ranch. And it wasn't, and then all of his subsequent encounters were not on the ranch. Mm-hmm. Nothing happened to him on the ranch. I mean, it was all stuff that happened outside the ranch.
I feel like he found something else, though. I feel like he found something similar, but it's definitely more sinister. Mm-hmm. Because, if you, like I said before, when you start messing with a man's peace of mind, then you're definitely doing something sinister, because if they just attacked it physically real quick, if it attacked him physically and just try to get rid of him physically over and over again, then I could see it as a creature that's just hell bent on getting him. But when it's showing up at places and just disappearing just to mess with him and keep him scared and not letting him sleep, then I know that this what he saw had to be a little different.
Yeah, definitely.
It's definitely more spiritual.
Yeah, that's bad juju right there.
Yep. So, guys, I guess that's it for the 100th episode. I hope it was all that it was cracked up to be. It was supposed to be an important episode, important milestone. I think right up there with our Halloween shows and our 1-year anniversary show, where we had Ken and Vic and on there, and then Lyle did an interview. We're going to get Lyle Blackburn back on the show, too. I guarantee you guys we got to do that. He's got some really good books he's released recently. I can't keep up with all the good books coming out that I'm trying to read them all, and I'm like, oh, man, I got so many. And I definitely want to get him back on, and we're going to talk to these people. We're going to get Nick Redfern on. I talked to him the other day. I'm Chad Lewis. I'm just been super busy. It's nothing on their part. It's just me. I got so much going on, and I don't mean like I'm so important. I'm just saying I got so much going on. I'm trying to get all these shows out, and we've recorded a ton of them, and we still have a big, a bunch, in the chamber that need to come out. So.
But we also try to keep things fresh. I mean, so like obviously like this one is 100 episodes, so we do it. We did it right before that week, so I mean, we try to keep our shows, at least relevant.
Yeah, but we got to get them other ones out though.
Find a show that's like 2 to 3 months old, and we're like, oh, here you go, let's just throw it out, and it has nothing to do. We're talking about old stuff that doesn't even happen anymore.
Yeah. I don't know of any shows like that, but
I mean, we made
if it does come up, though, I'll make sure we don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a couple times where I felt like we've had a really good vault of time of shows, and then again, like you're so hyped to do the shows that sometimes you'll have me back next week and you're like, you ready to do another show? And I'm like, we just have like a bunch in there right now. Do we really need to?
Yeah, well, you kind of got to do the special ones, though. You got to get them in there.
Mm-hmm.
Folks, I want to ask you a big favor. I want you to pray for our friend Anna Choate. She was on our show, and she did the, gosh, dog, I didn't even look the episode up that she was on, but she did a 2-parter where she, with the Herb Baumeister, the serial killer, it was, she had did the research, and then she had gone into Fox Hollow Farms and done a field investigation of the hauntings there that were pretty horrific, and the murders were horrific. Baumeister, of course, is a serial killer who was credited with killing. They believe he may have killed up to 50 people.
I mean, aren't they still finding?
They're still finding fragments to this day. They're finding bones. But she did that investigation. She was a pretty tough girl, and she ended up having an appendix rupture, and she got sepsis, and now she's trying to fight for her life up there in Colorado. And I hope that you guys will say a prayer for her, please. Please keep her in your prayers. Send her positive thoughts and energy and get her well, because we want her to come back and be our friend and stay in our lives. She's my wife's dear, dear friend, and they talk all the time. They're good friends. And so if you could keep her in your prayers. And also, I want to say something else. There's a lot of people that are suffering right now. We're going through these next round of lockdowns. A lot of things are happening. Everybody's upset, and a lot of bad things are happening left and right, and it just seems like it just keeps getting worse. Keep your chin up. Stay positive, okay? And just keep on pushing. And just stay together. We're all a family here at PRT. We're all our listeners, we treat them like family. Like I said, we're doing 2 giveaways now. In fact, if you want to, Ryan, why don't you post the show in your group, and Tony post the show in your group, and we'll choose a winner from each one of y'all's groups, and just one from the Paranormal Round Table group.
All right.
And I'll let Nelly know too. Maybe we'll have 4 winners. Who knows? We'll just do it. We'll just do it up.
It's 100 episodes, so I mean, why not?
It's a 100 episode show. We got lots of material of lots of merchandise to give away. I mean, we made a huge order because we wanted to, be able to do a little bit extra for Christmas, and so you guys go, and we're going to drop the link to this show. We're going to do it in a Whisper to a Scream, and then we're going to do it for Paranormal Round Table, Encounters, and Lounge. So Whisper to a Scream, and then the others. And then Ryan, you can choose from your group, and Tony, you choose from your group, or y'all can choose from each other's group, so nobody says y'all are being biased in your group. So you don't get anybody resenting you. Yeah, you choose from his, and he chooses from yours.
All right.
And I'll let Nelly choose from Paranormal Roundtable, and I'll choose from Paranormal.
Remember, Ryan wants the questions though, so if you're in my group, you got to get those good questions out. That's what he's looking for.
Make them really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, guys, I really enjoyed this. At Roundtable, Anthony, thanks for standing in since Nelly had to go lay down because she wasn't feeling good. And guys, please keep her in your prayers. Nelly really needs your prayers, please. And another person that's suffering is one of our long time friends, Mike Tooley. He listens to the show regularly. He works for us. He's also going to be doing some the general contracting on building our house that we're starting to build. And he's sick. He's very sick right now. And he went to the hospital with severe dehydration after he came back from the deer lease. And he's not doing too good. So if you guys could pray for him, Mike Tooley, Anna Choate, and please keep them in your prayers, and Nellie, my wife. So if everybody just prays really hard, I think we can help fix things too. We can get rid of all this darkness in this world, keep the beacon of light lit. And remember, guys, you're not alone. You are not alone. You're a part of the PRT family. You can message me or Tony or Ryan or Anthony or Nelly anytime you want, and just ask any question you want, and as long as it's not vulgar. Then only Ryan will answer.
Yeah.
Very true. I will get to those right away. Those are my favorite questions right there.
So, anyways, that being said, guys, I want everybody to have a safe weekend. I hope you enjoyed this 100th episode. Go back and listen and re-listen and tell your mom, your dad, your friends, all your, whatever, and let them know that PRT is a worthy show for their ears to feast on. All right. So, for that being said, hopefully you're not being treed by a dog man or being chased on a motorcycle by one, or being drug out of the back of a car. Everyone here at PRT, good night.
Good night.
Good night.